My name is Richard Furr, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family. I'm Cloud Hired.
So I'm cloud hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm cloud hired.
Because of Go Cloud Architect program, I am cloud hired.
See? I am cloud hired. Thank you, Mike and the Glowcloud team.
Welcome, everyone. This is Michael Gibbs, and I am joined by Alonzo Coleman from my team. And today we're here to help you build your career. Maybe you desire to become a cloud architect or an enterprise architect or a solutions architect or a network architect or a security architect. Maybe you desire to become a network engineer or a cloud engineer or some other technology career. We're here today to guide you. See, there are two ways you can get to your goal. One is you can basically learn from experts that have already been there and helped others get there, learn from the mistakes that others have made, and save yourself time and effort and get to your goals quickly. Well, the alternative is you could just try and see what works and doesn't work, like throwing mud against the wall and seeing what sticks and make a lot of mistakes along the way, which take you a lot of time, effort, and money. So we're here to guide you, and we want to do anything we can to assist you in your career. So don't be shy. Ask your career questions. I've spent more than 2 decades now in various roles: network architect, security architect, cloud architect, enterprise architect, business architect. I've trained people that work at Apple and Amazon and Cisco and IBM and Google and Microsoft and Accenture and Deloitte and KPMG, Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Barclays Bank, LeaseWeb, CDW, Archetype, MUFG Bank, and so many other companies. So I know what employers look for. Employers reach out to me constantly. I've been featured in 100 plus magazines for the work we've done helping people get out there. And I just want to help you. So ask your questions and please do so. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. We have a couple of free things to tell you about. So we've got a free document on how to become a cloud architect. If you're interested, there's that. And we are more than talking. We also have a free interview guide to help you win the interview, which will talk about how to do the reconnaissance for the interview, the ways that you should prepare for the interview, and it's all free. So go download it. In the description of this video, there's lots of things to go help you. Go sign up and download. And please ask your questions because Alonzo and I want to help you. Alonzo came to me. He didn't know where to start in tech. He took a whole bunch of certifications, spent a whole lot of time, came to us. We trained him. Got his first job on the cloud, which he kind of liked. And then he got a call from me. Hey, Alonzo, like my twin brother, could you come help me, train the next generation of cloud architects? And he's laughing because he knows it's true. And I was like, please come with me. Please come with me. Because, we're very close and we both care so much about our students. So ask your questions. Alonzo, you want to say anything before we begin?
Oh yeah, always. It's always exciting to just work with everyone. I definitely had an interesting cloud journey about 5 years ago going on, where I was all over the tech wilderness, if you will, looking for the right technology, and I'm trying to understand what it meant, what it took to become a cloud architect. And so going through the right training with the right people, with the right background, I arrived in some really wonderful places, and I'm happy to share the knowledge that I have from originating from Go Cloud Careers as well. So one of the things that I want to make sure that everyone does, hit that like button and subscribe. Over the last week, we had this awesome boot camp. We had a week and a half boot camp talking about the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate boot camp plus more. And I really want to see everyone show up today to really participate, subscribe, like if you like it. If you see someone that could benefit from this, share it. We want to share with the world what it means to be a cloud architect, which I love, and being able to help them understand the competencies and what they stand to gain with this position.
And fantastic. And, we had so much fun with the boot camp that I got together with me, our chief marketing officer, Alonzo, and Chris, and said, what's the biggest discount we can do is a flash sale. So we're going to offer 40% off for a very short period of time on every program we have. So if you're interested in training with us, take advantage of that. My team popped the link box. So let's get to some questions. And please don't be shy. We'll stick around. We'll answer them. We really want to help.
Let's rock and roll. What you got, guys and gals? What's happening? From Cloud Station, Mike, how can I create content which will showcase my competency as a cloud architect?
That's a great question. So for every career, we have to not only get experience, meaning projects that actually make sense for our career, projects that show our strengths and our expertise. For example, we need to go do that. And we need to build projects that develop our expertise and also show what we're capable of. So you have to look at the architect and what does the architect actually do, Cloud Station. So if you understand the architect role is a strategy role. It's not an engineering role. And I love engineers. They're the super smart techies that build the stuff and make it happen. The architect is a strategic advisor. So what do? We meet with the clients and ask their business goals, business pain points, business challenges. We examine the organization's business processes. How do things happen? Like, how does a product get created? How is a product serviced? How is a product sold? And we work with that organization to make sure we understand the way they want the business to operate in the future and or help them with that. After that, what we typically do is as follows. We will go in and bring in a team of engineers to baseline the systems that they have. And then we will build an architecture team where we'll create a strategy or a blueprint, if you will, with that team in order to get the client to their end goals. And then after we lead that team, we will lead that team to document the solution. We will lead that team to present the solution. We will sell that solution, negotiate the solution, determine the governance structure, and so many things that organization has. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. That's what we do. We presented conferences. We presented executive briefings. We lead, we sell, we design. We write thought leadership documents. So that is what we do. So when people say, Mike, what kind of project should I do? Or what kind of content should I create? It should show you are skilled at the role. So what do I mean by that? So there's a custom architecture, which is what we really use for our business, which is evaluating the business and creation of an architecture. At the same time, there are things called reference architectures. And reference architectures how would the ordinary business create a strategy? And that's a great starting point after you know the business goals, but you're going to have to tune those reference architectures to your client. Now, if you went out there and created a reference architecture on how big banks could better leverage data and artificial intelligence solutions to process trades faster and make better price predictions so the organizations would know how and when to buy and sell and hold and trade a stock, and you can give that information to the key traders, that would be good. If you were designing an algorithmic trading system, which is what they call a black box trading system, which takes in news, it looks at historical data, it looks at what's going in the market and the systems that will trade. Again, how would you design a reference architecture for a black box trading system for a bank? Again, is there. If you were going to go create content, and you talked about why 70% of architectures actually fail, and I'm not joking, 70% are disasters. And if you wrote content on, the main reasons that architectures fail, what architects could do to mitigate the risk of failure and help companies get more benefit out of their technology spending. Again, that would be out there. If you found the opportunity to present at a conference and give a presentation about something in tech and business, you're there. If you're explaining technology to the executive audience and context, again, that's something architects do because we have to explain it to the C-suite. And we also work with engineers, and I love engineers, but they're techie. I could go talk to an engineer about a root bridge and a designated bridge and a spanning tree, and they'd eat that stuff all up. But as an architect, I need to explain loop avoidance in switching to my executive, but I can't actually talk about that. So I kind of hope that actually answers your question. So content that shows you as an architect, content where you're presenting, content where you're creating strategies, content where you're creating blueprints, that is architect work. As a solutions architect, is it?
Go ahead, Mike.
As a solutions architect, is it necessary to do cloud-based projects which require hands-on skills? So I want you to understand what we actually do as architects. And then I'm going to give you the actual answer to that. And I, generally speaking, do have my architect students do hands-on projects. I do. But the projects typically aren't for architecture purposes. They're for other purposes, and I'll explain what they are in a minute. So the answer is I do believe you should get hands-on, and here's the reason why. If anybody ever asks you, have you configured this? You want to be able to say yes. Will doing hands-on projects make you a better architect? Probably not, and I'll explain why. So here's what a cloud architect does in reality. And you could ask me, you could ask David Lithicum, and any other architect that's working as an actual architect for a big architecture firm. First thing we do is we go meet with our clients. And we ask the executive team, what is the vision for your business? Where do you see business now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, or 12 months from now? And then after we do that, we have to look at the organization's business processes. And then we have to evaluate the way the company wants to operate. Will these business processes get them to their goals? And if the answer is no, guess what we have to do? We have to help that client re-architect their business processes. Then we have to go bring in a team of technology professionals to examine what the organization has, maybe map out the systems that they may not even have properly documented, baseline those systems, look at the network utilization, the CPU utilization, the DRAM utilization, the kind of storage performance they have, their application performance, and we're going to need to bring a team of engineers to do that. And after we understand that, meaning what they actually have, we then have to go think about it. Well, is what they have going to get them to their future business goals? If it is, job's done. If the technology platforms won't get them to their goals, then we have to create a new solution or re-architect a solution. Then, and when I mean, what are we looking at? Their technology? We're going to look at their network, their data center, their security, their cloud, their applications, their AI, their voice, their video systems. I mean, everything. Then after that, we will go back to we will lead a team of people to design this architecture. We will then assess the organization's readiness for change, meaning do they have the people that can implement the solution? Because architects don't touch the technology. Do they have the people that can maintain or manage the solution? For example, you're not going to ask the hobbyist pilot to fly a 747 or a 777 because that's a different kind of plane. And they may not have the sophistication to do that. But, you know, somebody that's been a fighter pilot in the Navy may have the sophistication to know how to fly that. So you got to assess their change. Then we have to document the solution. We've got to go communicate it to stakeholders, present it to stakeholders, get the stakeholders buy-in, help build the governance structure for the implementation team that's going to do it, find our project managers that are going to do that, find our service delivery executives that are going to help build it, and then we go on to a new client. So that's what we do. So does getting hands-on and learning engineering teach you architecture? The answer is absolutely not. But how we learn is dependent upon every person. So for some people, I can teach them BGP, and I can explain the finite state machine, and I can explain how these transitions are, and they can instantly see that in their head. And then they could understand how to engineer the traffic or design a path where some subnets take one link versus another. If that's enough for someone to get it, better off. That's me. I see it and understand it that way. Now, if I explain it to somebody and they partially get it, and then they have to go build it out to feel it and see it in their hands, then building it's going to help them. So the key is doing projects. So when I have people do projects, look, setting up an S3 bucket or a WordPress website or some of the silliness that I see people advising people to do, that will never get you hired. And the reason it will never get you hired is it has nothing to do what we do, and a 6-year-old could do it. And I've trained 6-year-olds to do it. Now, if you went out there and bought a couple of servers and built your own OpenStack cloud, that's going to give you hands-on knowledge. You'd have to set up the cloud networking. You'd have to set up the cloud control plane servers. You'd have to set up the storage and the compute systems. You might actually learn something on doing it. So I have no problem with projects. I make my students do projects, but to be fair, some people can learn how to be an architect and never touch the technology, because you don't learn how the technology works by learning how to configure it. You don't learn how to design it. And that's where people get stuck. There's a reason nobody hires the people that build the building to design the building. They hire an architect to design the building and a construction crew to build it. You want a new hotel built, you hire an architect, and they hire the construction bro. You want a bridge built, you hire an architect to design it and make it look like the Golden Gate Bridge. It's beautiful, right? But then you have engineers go and build it. So you don't learn it. And, people think they do. And I can give you examples of people all the time. And people say, I get it. I know networking. I configured a router. And I say, okay. Now, what happens from the time you actually say www.gocloudcareers.com on your browser until the time you receive the packet back? And they say, huh? And I say, I want to know. You just configured this. Your PC needs to go out and find the DNS server. What's it do? And they say, huh? I say, well, it does an ARP who has the MAC address of the default gateway of actually the server. And then the router proxy ARPs that. So then the system forwards the packet from the PC to that default gateway. The default gateway looks in its routing table and it says, do I have a route? If it doesn't have a route, it drops it. If it does have a route, it forwards it to the next path. And if it's over Ethernet, it's going to do ARP who has the MAC address. And I can give you lots of steps that occur along the way, but you can build stuff all day long and never learn things. So do I encourage building things? I do. Do I have my students build things? Yes, I do. But architecture is a conceptual thing. Engineering is a building thing, and we have to focus our time accordingly.
From Naga, do we have any generative AI or machine learning architect roles now?
Yeah, there's lots of generative AI and AI architect roles, lots of them. In fact, we actually have a program to train people. It's run by my good friend, David Lithicum. I've only been working with AI since 2000. So I only have 25 years of AI. So I didn't feel like I was the right person to create the AI architect program. But David Lithicum's been working with AI since 1985. His first AI system was in 1985. He did so much knowledge in AI that NASA hired him to design AI solutions for them. And he's been doing AI solutions since 1985. So when I've got someone with nearly 40 years of AI experience and I only have 20, I figured he was the guy to create our AI architect program. And my team can pop a link for that if you're curious. But yes, lots of AI architect roles, and they pay a lot because all architect roles pay a lot. But here we have a huge need and demand for them. And there's almost no supply. So Naga, it is one of the best jobs in the world.
Daylight America. Hi, everyone. I am a professional who is using Coursera. And would these courses train me to work in the U.S. government in large cities? Thank you.
So first thing I would say is, why would you like to work for the U.S. government? What are your goals, reasons, and rationale? If you want to work for them because they're a big and stable employer, great. Understand the free market may pay you double or triple what you can get paid for to work in the government. So if you're looking for stability and a 9-to-5 job, the government is great. And potentially a pension. If you're looking to earn the most, this may not be what you want to do. So whether you get a job in the U.S. government or whether you get a job in the free market is based upon the following things. It is based upon, do you have the right skills for the job? After it's based on what the right skills for the job are, it's based on your attitude, your energy, your enthusiasm, your communication skills, your executive presence, your emotional intelligence. So you have to get the right things. 90% of the people that I've seen try to get to their goals with a Coursera or Udemy don't get there. And there's usually two reasons. With Udemy, it's people that are teaching courses that don't know anything about what they're teaching. With Coursera, it's because people don't know what they need to learn. And here's what I mean. I can't tell you the number of people that have come to me to learn how to be architects that have gone on 100 interviews and no one would hire them. And they know how Python coding, they could write a Terraform script, they know all these DevOps tools, they know Linux. And then they go on an interview and someone says, how would you design my a secure demilitarized zone for my web app? And they say, huh? Because they don't know what a demilitarized zone is and they don't know how to design it. Because what they did is they got the skill for all the wrong jobs. So what I would ask you this is, could you tell me the role that you would like? And could you tell me what it is you are learning? And then I can see if you're getting the right training to match your goal job with your goal things. Because that's really the thing. Some jobs Coursera can really help you. Like if you wanted to be a Linux admin, yeah, Coursera is going to really get you there. If you wanted to be a security architect, it will not. But for some jobs, it would be. So tell me what your goal career is, and then I can tell you what you actually need. And I kind of hope that will answer it. But I need to know your end destination before I can build you the plan. And if it's a plan we can build on Coursera, I'll tell you. If it's a plan we can do with Coursera with 20 other books on the side, I will tell you, and which books they are. But I just want to make sure we know what the goal is. So tell me that I can answer that.
From VJ. One day I want to become an enterprise architect. Just started to enroll in the generative AI program with Go Cloud Careers. But what are the next steps, Mike?
So you're in the generative AI program, you're going to learn generative AI, which is an awesome skill. If you wanted to be an enterprise architect, I would have recommended you take our enterprise architect program because that's preparing you for this. But all these architecture programs have the same kind of thing because the role of the architect is a business executive who designs systems to optimize business performance. Now, the AI architect is focused on AI. So they will need to know more about AI than the enterprise architect who needs to know more about business. But VJ, here's a good thing that I can tell you. I started in a specialty role, and I was a network architect. Now, I got to learn very quickly that a network architect could pay this, but an executive architect or an enterprise architect could pay this. And I was like double and triple. So that was more exciting to me. I also got to make a bigger impact in my clients. It was more of an executive role. I didn't have to focus so much on the test and kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So that's that. So what I would say is get your first architect job in the Gen AI space if you're taking our Gen AI course. And then either come with us or get more business acumen. Business process re-engineering you're going to need to learn. And we have some of that in our Gen AI. You're going to need more executive presence as an executive or as an enterprise architect than you would an AI architect. You're going to need much more business knowledge. You're going to need much more leadership skills. You're going to need much more sales skills because now you're going to be presenting to the board on a routine basis. And an enterprise architect could be called an enterprise architect. They could be called the chief architect. They could be called the CIO or the CTO as well. They're all enterprise architect roles. So do your architect thing and get more business, more leadership, more executive things, and you will love the enterprise architect role. And I'll tell you what I did. And that's why I have our elite program and our enterprise architect program. I was a network architect. I went and got an MBA. After the MBA, I took courses in CXO relevancy, courses on sales, courses on presentation skills, and they were expensive courses. Courses on leadership, courses on executive presence, courses on negotiation, well over $100,000 worth of these courses. And poof, I found myself my enterprise architecture role. But with us, VJ, you can add a simple enterprise bolt-on to your program, and I would do that. It's very inexpensive, and you could attend the enterprise architect part as well. Or, quite frankly, you can get a great AI architect role finishing our program, and after that, working on your business skills and leadership skills, and you will have awesome opportunities, and you will love it. And these are great careers. And since you're in our AI program, you're learning from David Lithicum. And he and I are both executive architects, and he will give you that business acumen and leadership. So you're going to do really, really well.
From Monroe, I want to work on the customer side of cloud architecture, not the service provider side.
That's totally fine. It's the exact same skill. And I'm going to make it very clearly. It is still the same design, present, and sell role. If you're a real architect on the customer side, you will still never be allowed to touch the technology. You will not administer it. You will not code. You will not configure. So I've had roles for the end customer as an architect, and I've had them for the providers. So let's talk about the difference. Today, I'm working at Cisco or IBM or Microsoft, a really good heavy-duty architecture company. And here's what I do. I go interview the clients. I find out their business goals. I create pain points. I look at their business processes. I create an architecture team. We evaluate the technology. We lead the team together. We design the technology. I sell it to the customer, negotiate the deal, and leave. That's what you do pre-sales working for any of these companies. Now, poof, you just got hired at a global bank as a cloud architect. Now, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to go to the executives of your business, and you're going to find the goals and vision for their business. Then you're going to examine the business processes. Then you're going to work to see what business processes need to occur. Then you're going to go to your technology team and baseline your equipment. What's working, what's not, what are the CPUs, what are the DRAM utilization, what's the network, what's the security. And then you call the vendors and bring the vendors in. Now, each one of them is going to be designing stuff and recommending stuff. And you're going to look at them and say, well, this thing sort of works. This thing meets, it works, but maybe we need a combination, because the vendors are going to want to sell you what's most profitable for them. When you work for the customer, it's like, well, AWS wants me all to be on AWS. Microsoft wants me to be half Microsoft, half Oracle, and they're recommending this. I decide I want to be half on AWS and half on Azure. Now, when it comes to security, Microsoft and AWS have their security solutions, but I want something more robust and enterprise ready that I can use in both clouds. So then you call the Palo Alto, the Fortinet, the Checkpoint, the Cisco's, and you design bigger security solutions. Then you work with Microsoft or maybe your Active Directory structure or what have you, and you put all your vendors together. Then what do? You've got the solution the vendors have given you. You've tuned the solution to what you want. You go present it back to your executive team and say, I want this. And then you go to your key stakeholders and you create the budget in your internal organization so you can purchase it. It is the same job. Now, in one place, you're going to get a check, which is like a commission check based upon the company's performance in your region's sales. In another place, you're going to be at the end customer. Either place is good. I will tell you, you will work twice as hard if you work for the end customer than you will if you will work for a vendor. Keep that in the back of your mind. I will tell you that if you work for the end customer, it's going to be pretty much the same, very similar things all the time. If you work for a vendor, it's going to be a new challenge every day. Both of these jobs are good. I'll tell you, I've earned a lot more working for vendors than working for the companies themselves. I'll tell you, I worked a lot hard and had a lot more stress working for the company than the end vendor themselves. But you know what really matters? That you're happy, that you love what you do. And if you want to work for that end customer, great. Personally, when you look at a resume and someone's had 5 jobs in 5 years, that you try to not hire that person because you get worried, or they quitting their jobs or getting fired before they get fired. And that's not a good thing. And, for me, before I found myself in a vendor, I'd get bored. I'd work at a company for a year and say, oh, I had enough of this. I'd work for another company a year and I was bored. I worked for another company. And then I found myself in the vendor's face, and every day was something new. And it was like, oh, this is fun. And I got to do what I loved. I got to do what I dreamed. And, that was for me. But we got to go where we're at. And, you can work for a company. I've got people like Wallace Agana, who was a sales rep, who worked at at JP Morgan Chase after we trained him. Jennifer Ema was a mental health tech that JP Morgan Chase hired her, and she went there. Heck, Daniel Bozo didn't even graduate high school. Love this kid. He's a rock star, and he's super smart. He got hired by JP Morgan Chase as a solution architect. So, that's some. We've had lots of clients like Jermaine get hired by SMHU, and he's working there as an enterprise architect, and he loves it. He loves it. So anywhere you want to go is fine. Just make sure what you do that you like. And if you don't like it, no big deal. Go find another one until you're happy.
From Nigel, how can I measure my progress and competency on my journey to become a cloud architect? And what competencies do I need to be good in before I can start applying for cloud architect roles?
So, great question there, Nigel. So the first thing is you have to be able to do the job. Have to be. And what does that mean? I'll give you a couple of questions for you to think about. And the way you could, and I'm not asking you to answer them, but I want you to think about it. If I asked you to design a remote access strategy for an organization that has 250,000 employees in every continent of the world except Antarctica, how would you design it? If you can design that and you already have a picture in your mind of the components of where your VPN concentrators would be and where your firewalls would be and the type of routing you need on the internet, you probably could do the job. Probably could. If I said you have a bank that has a trading system and they need to shave off a millisecond of latency to make their trading system perform better, can you answer that? Would you be able to think of, why you wouldn't want to be in the cloud and why you might need a RAID card with 19 million IOPS and the types of CPU performance that you would need and the type of DRAM and thinking about the page and swap file that's sitting in the system? Would you be thinking about how to reduce your network latency and how you could do it? Would you know how? If the answer is that you could get close to it, you're ready. Can you go out there and give a speech in front of 1,000 people and make them happy? If you're going to be an architect, you need to be able to do it. Can you go give a presentation among billionaires that are going to be in the room and convince them that they need to invest $1 billion in your solution? If you're there, you can do it. Can you build a business council of CIOs and let them tell you what you need? And that's one of the things I had to do on my first architect job. Mike, go build the business council of the biggest CIOs out there from the biggest firms and get their input. And I did it. It was great. I got to learn a lot about CXO relevancy and what to say and what not to say in that business council. If I talked to you and gave you simple architectural questions like, tell me what kind of demilitarized zone you need to have for a mission critical web app. What needs to be permitted, what not? You know how to do the job. So those are the kind of things that are there. Could you plan a cloud migration of 250,000 servers to the cloud? If the answer is yes, and you can do it in a manner that's going to optimize your client's business performance, go out there and interview. And honestly, if you're 80% to any of the things that I told you, and you go out there and interview, you will get hired. Assuming you communicate well, you've got a good attitude, energy, enthusiasm. When they interview you or interviewing honestly, meaning you don't have one resume and then they bring you on the interview and they ask you questions about what's on your resume and you can't understand it, you will get a good job. Can you explain technology to a non-technology professional? That's something architects do all the time. Let's say Alonzo's my chief information officer. I promise you my chief information officer does not understand the difference between a type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, and type 5, and a type 7 LSA and OSPF. And if they did, they wouldn't be the chief information officer. They'd be a network engineer. But could you communicate to that CIO, Alonzo, we've noticed a lot of outages in your network. We've also noticed that you're having interoperability issues with your other networks. And because you've chosen 3 different routing protocols, we're translating in between them, and that's causing us to have problems. What we could do is we can create a new architecture, use an industry standards-based routing protocol, and increase your performance and availability and reduce your costs. Now Alonzo's interested. So if you can do those things, you are ready for an architect role. But if you can write a Terraform script, you are not ready. If you know DevOps, you're not ready. If you know engineering, you are not ready because it's a different job. Great jobs, super important jobs, just different jobs.
What certifications with generative AI architect? Did you hear me, Mike? Wasn't sure.
Okay, so yeah, absolutely. So here's the first thing we have to understand. Here's what a certification is. the name of a service, and how to configure that service. So instead of calling this water, I could call it the elastic agua container. It's still water. So half of your certification is learning the silly marketing name that company spent millions of dollars to come up with a creative name. The next thing is teaching you how to configure it. Okay, so now here, this is the engineering piece. Drink it. So I gave you a fancy name and I taught you how to drink water. Wonderful. Now, do you know what you do as an architect when it comes to water? You're planning, where you're going to dig the water from and the water filtration systems that you need to use, and how you're going to distribute that water and what the pipes need to look like, and what protections do you need to have the pipes, what protections do you need to have the security systems. It's something different. So, David Lithicum, who's a good friend, says, when I see too many certifications, I won't hire someone as an architect. And I agree with him that there is no such thing as a generative AI architect certification. And that silly little practitioner thing that's coming out by a cloud provider that's going to be a name of a service and how to configure that service has nothing to do with AI architecture. So there's that. Now, the next thing that we need to think about is what certification should you get anyway? And here's the point of a certification, Ilian. It will get you an interview. Won't get you hired, because it won't give you any of the skills that are necessary, but it will get you an interview. So ding, 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 win for the certification. So where are your Gen AI stuff going to be? It's either going to be in the data center or it's going to be in the cloud. So I would recommend getting either the AWS Solutions Architect Professional or the Azure Solutions Architect Expert, because that's going to give you basic elementary level cloud familiarity of the services they have. And when I say entry level, the reason all these certifications are entry level is they are the name of a service without teaching you how the service works and how to configure that. And guess what? That's what technicians do. So the Certified Solutions Architect Professional is a technician certification. The Azure Solutions Architect Expert is a technician certification. The architect role is a planning role. The certifications are doing roles. So you're learning somebody else's job. But I still recommend one of those cloud provider certifications. Next. And I'll tell you why we recommend, and the reason we recommend the Microsoft one or the AWS one over the Google one is as follows. Since you're not going to learn anything related to architecture in any of these certifications, the goal of the certification is to help you get an interview. Where are most cloud workloads running? On AWS or Azure? So when you got a recruiter that doesn't understand that all the cloud is just somebody else's network in a data center, and they're trying to figure out who they interview, they're going to be more likely to interview you with AWS and Azure certifications than they will with Google, who has like 10 to 12% of the market share. So that's why we don't recommend the Google one. Not that it's not a great certification. It's equally good to the rest, might even be better, actually. I'll tell you, the Google Professional Cloud Architect has more architecture than the AWS or the Azure one, but it doesn't have the brand recognition, so we don't like it. The next thing, Ilian, that I recommend is most architectures fail. What do I mean by fail? Look, the tech works. That's nothing. Getting the tech to work in today's world is easy. The tech's much simpler. But being able to do anything for the business, 70% of architectures are disaster. And why are they disasters? Because people use like a cloud provider's tech framework, which teaches you how to design the tech, but has nothing to do with how do you design it for business needs. So I recommend an enterprise architecture framework. We typically teach the TOGAF 10, and that is my preferred enterprise architecture framework because it's used by the biggest of the big people when it comes to architecture. So I kind of hope that makes sense. So we like the TOGAF. And then after that, that's probably enough. I would focus much more time on business skills, on leadership skills, on sales skills, on executive skills, because that's what's going to get you hired. I'll tell you where most engineers don't get hired on the interview. It's here. They go on an interview, and these are your most technical people. So they do a tech screening interview, and those engineers do real well because they're there with the tech far more than an architect. Then they come in and they have to give a presentation to a panel. And that's where all your techies that don't have the presentation skills get kicked out of the interview process. So maybe 2 certifications just to get you an interview. And then I want you to focus your time. So I want you to really focus on how do you design that AI system for a client's business need? What are the components that you need to use? What are the data hygiene practices that you need to do? What are the types of extraction, transformation, and loading tools? What kind of mapping and reduction things to need to do? Where do you need to create that data, store that data, and clean your data? What type of AI model should you choose? How would you train your AI model based on your unique needs? How would you have the system tested for its unique needs? What's going into the adversarial systems that are part of this? See, when you understand the pieces and parts of that and how they work together, you understand AI architecture.
Yeah.
But there's no certification in the world that teaches that. It's all about how would you configure, say, a SageMaker.
Yeah.
But architects don't configure anything.
From Ruth,
What a question.
what's the difference between the solutions architect and cloud architect, Mike?
And Ruth, for most people, they're the same, but I'll explain the difference. And I've got lots of people getting solutions architect jobs, but I will never teach someone to be a solution architect. I will always teach them to be a cloud architect for this reason. Here's what a solution architect is. If you're a solution architect at Palo Alto, you design, present, and sell Palo Alto security solutions. If you are a solutions architect at NVIDIA, you design, present, and sell NVIDIA solutions. If you are a solutions architect at AWS, you design, present, and sell AWS and AWS only solutions. Now, why won't I teach that, Ruth? Because 98% of organizations use more than one cloud. And if all you know is AWS, the reality is there's no place you could ever work. If all you know is Azure, there's no place you could ever work. So I teach cloud architects. So my cloud architects do the same role as the solution architect, but they know how to do it anywhere. So maybe an organization wants better performance and lower costs, and they build a Nutanix or an OpenStack private cloud. Maybe they connect that private cloud to AWS for its massive infrastructure, Azure for its expertise in AI, and Google for disaster recovery. My cloud architect can design that multi-cloud solution. So cloud architect is one step over. Now, AWS has a funny name for a cloud architect. It's really more of a technical architect there, but for the rest of the firms, if you're going to work at like a Deloitte or an Accenture or a big company or like IBM, the cloud architect designs that end-to-end multi-cloud solution. So bigger role, higher paying role. But it's really, if you just worked at AWS, you're still being a cloud architect. You're just designing, presenting, and selling only on AWS, which means you're architecting a single point of failure in your solution. You're probably going to recommend only the AWS stuff if that's part of your job, when you might be better off recommending other vendors and things. Because when you are a solutions architect, in many cases, you are paid you're paid a commission for the company you work for, or you are paid on the region sold this much, so therefore you get this much of a bonus. So one is more objective, and the solutions architect is just one company. But otherwise, we do the same thing.
From SA, how useful is a degree in becoming a solutions architect if you already have data experience, Mike?
So I don't know what your data experience is. Is your data experience engineering? If so, this is a completely different career. Is your data experience an architect? Meaning you're designing the systems, but you're not building them, and you're presenting them, and you're selling them, and you're leading them. So there is that. Now, knowing how to do the job is really there. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So your data experience may or may not be helpful to you to get an architect role. I mean, it will be. Maybe you understand data pipelines. Maybe you understand the data tools like Apache Kafka, for example, versus a Kinesis, and when you could use which one. Maybe you understand data storage. Maybe you understand data hygiene and those kind of things. That would help you be able to better design your systems. By comparison, if you're working on ETL tools as a programmer, that's not going to teach you how to design these systems. That's going to teach you how to work on ETL tools as a programmer or a database administrator. So there's that. Now, regarding degrees, they don't matter so much anymore. And, it all started with IBM many years ago. IBM had a paper, and it was a very influential paper. Bear Stearns, the bank, had the same paper. And they said, in this paper, do we hire MBAs or do we hire PhDs? PhDs were poor, smart, with a deep desire to be rich. And companies like IBM found instead of hiring a rich person that had lots of money and went and could get fancy degrees at an Ivy League school and then got an MBA who couldn't do the job, we can hire this person that's poor and they're hungry and they're smart and they're willing to work. In my experience, the PhDs are wildly successful. I can think of Ivan Tambo, who told me that he was earning $2.10 per day working in Cameroon. He took my course. He got hired by AWS while he was working as a waiter while he was in school. He's already been promoted. Same time, Jordan Kitko, same kind of situation where he grew up poor, worked hard, poof, he got it. Daniel Boso told me at some point he was living out of his car. I didn't know, but he got hired by JP Morgan Chase. So that's the power of the PSD. At the same time, I went and did 2 MBA programs. I hire Alonzo, who's got an MBA. Chris has got an MBA, and I've got 2 PhD business school professors. So the key is if what you're learning is real, it's going to help you. If you're going to school and you're learning about fluff, it's not going to help you. If you want to be an architect and you learn programming, well, if I said to you, "Posi sisemera ogoima o Mikey's ogomara se gataike kiskalaika," I spoke to you in another language. That's the equivalent of programming. Now I said, "My name is Mike and I like cats and dogs." Now, that's not going to help you design a solution. But the degree is good, but it's not necessary. So the biggest employers themselves, the ones who really hire, like IBM, Microsoft, Google, they actually dropped their degree requirements because what they found is what's being taught in schools now does not adequately prepare people for any of today's modern work jobs. Hopefully they get that better, but still degrees are good. And at some point you may want to have a degree anyway. Maybe your goal is to be that chief information officer. They're going to want a degree for that. Maybe you want that $800,000 chief architect job at some point. They're going to want a degree for that. But AWS hired Ivan. Ivan was in school, and he went and interviewed in December the year before he graduated, and they made him the offer in January. And he reached out to me and he said, "Mike, what do I do? I've worked 2 jobs to put myself through Georgia Tech, and they're going to give me this job right now, but I won't get to finish college." And I said, "Well, Ivan, ask AWS if they're willing to wait for you to be done school." And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Ivan, there's nobody out there that knows architecture. We got a whole bunch of techies that confuse architecture with engineering. You're as good as I think you are. I bet you they wait for you. And if not, you take this job and you finish these courses one by one at night school and you graduate." Amazon waited for him 6 months to graduate school because he was awesome. And there are almost no architects that can actually do the job.
Great explanation, Mike.
Thank you.
Back to Cloud Station. I have CompTIA certs, Mike. Are they going to help me get cloud architect roles?
So Cloud Station, I'm going to be honest with you. I tell people to not do CompTIA certs. And I'll tell you why. I'm going to make it very clear that CompTIA certifications are good certifications. They are, by a legitimate organization that are not vendor proprietary. Ding, 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 they're great. Here's the problem with CompTIA certs. They are very basic, and the brand recognition amongst them as hiring managers is horrible. The CompTIA A+ says maybe the person can work at the Best Buy Geek Squad and doing PC repair. The CompTIA Net Plus means maybe with the A+, maybe, but just maybe, but I'm not sure they can take a $30 an hour help desk job. So it doesn't have any oomph to it. So I generally tell people that are focused on getting fundamental certs, and I don't recommend getting fundamental certs. I recommend getting certs in the jobs you want. But for people that want to do fundamental certs, I recommend that they skip the Net Plus and they swap it out for the CCNA and or the CCNP, because that way they'll get something that's much more deep and it has more marketable scope. For the A+, which is learning a little bit about PCs, I recommend people not waste their money on it or on their time. Go buy a good CPU, go buy some good DRAM, go buy a good motherboard, go buy some hard drives, and go buy some GPUs. and the power supply in a case and go build yourself a computer. You'll learn more about it than you would in the A+. Then I recommend popping a good hypervisor on that computer. On that computer, go build yourself a cloud, build yourself some virtual machines, do some network simulators on this thing, try to hack into your virtual machines, and I'm getting some real good fundamentals experience. And that other CompTIA certification people do is the Linux Plus. Again, no hiring manager is going to care about the Linux Plus, even though it's a fine certification, and swap it out with the Red Hat Certified Engineer. And that will give people good, strong fundamentals, and that person would be more likely to be hired as a sysadmin with those certifications, or potentially even a junior engineer, which will pay double what help desk is, and it'll look much better on someone's resume. Now, having said that, Cloud Station, I do not ever recommend people just study stuff just to get their stuff. And here's the reason why. The architecture career is a specialty career. Gymnastics is a specialty sport. So I don't know how many of you like gymnastics, but I've been watching Simone Biles for like the last several Olympics. This girl, this little powerhouse, is the best in the world. She's incredible. And why is she great? She is great because she trains 6 to 8 hours a day of gymnastics. It's either gymnastics, gymnastics conditioning, gymnastics recovery. She wakes up, trains. She eats, she rests, she trains. It's all gymnastics. You know what she's not doing? She's not running. She's not out there, doing bodybuilding and flexing in the mirror. She's not out there playing hockey. She's the best of the best because she preferred her job. You want to be a great architect, Cloud Station, you go out there, you learn architecture, and you dedicate every minute of your life to being a great architect. Architects don't code. Don't waste your time learning how to code. Architects don't work on Linux. Don't do your Linux time. No, we have to understand the Linux kernel. We have to understand the Linux hypervisors. We have to understand how Linux manages memory. And we may need to think about where we might use Linux into our systems, but we're not going to configure them. So I kind of hope that makes sense.
From Ian, how do you negotiate, Mike, for a higher salary when you've been given new responsibilities and completed projects successfully?
So I'm assuming you're referring to your current job. So here's the thing. Just because you're doing new projects and completing projects successfully, that's your job. That's going to have nothing to do with getting you a raise. That's going to have everything to do with you not being laid off. So let's talk about what goes into a raise. Let's talk about what hiring managers want. The first thing that goes into negotiating a higher salary is finding out what your manager's goals are. What is it they want? What is it that they think you can do better? What is it that they think you need to go to the next level up? That's the first thing. Because you may be thinking that what they want is your ability to be doing the project successfully. When they really may want you to become a team lead to give you more and be able to communicate more and present better and train other people so the team is more productive. Sometimes it's related to your presentation skills. And again, they can't move you up, for there's that. So just because you're doing your job doesn't mean I'm going to give you a raise. In fact, if a company doesn't give you a raise and you're in the job for several years, one of two things is going on. And I'm going to be dead honest. One is they don't have the money to give you a raise. And number two is they are not impressed with you and they're hoping you'll quit. And that's why they don't give you a raise, so that you quit and they can hire somebody else for a higher salary that they want to do the job. So first, ask that hiring manager what you want. For example, I had a hiring manager many years ago, and it was in a big role. And I was a CCIE. I had all kinds of things. And I said to my manager, I said, I'd really like to take on a bigger role with bigger responsibilities and potential greater long-term earnings. And my manager said, good, I'm glad you asked this question, Mike. And I said, what would you suggest I do to do that? And I got told, Mike, okay, look, you're one of the best sales engineers we have, but just because you're great at sales engineering doesn't mean I can just pay you more. My manager said, if we can increase your business acumen, your designs will be much more likely to provide business benefits for your clients. If I can teach you how to sell, Mike, instead of selling $40 million this year, you might sell $120 million this year in your solutions. Then I can pay you 3 times more because you're bringing in more profit. He said, if I could put you into one of these lead roles and we could leverage your communication skills, Mike, and you can teach all the engineers we have on the team to be better, then think about what you're doing. So then it's not Mike Gibbs as the rock star. Then it's my entire team as rock stars, and Mike Gibbs got me to creating those rock stars. I can pay you more, and I can promote you. Then my manager said, your executive presence is a little lacking. If you get a little training on executive presence, and they spent 20 grand on my executive presence training, poof, we can do that. About 6 months later, I was in a role that paid 6 figures more. But, and here's the big but, it was what they wanted, what we wanted. And that's the key lesson. I learned this lesson many, many years ago. And I'll tell you, you should apply this to your life. I first got married. And when I first got married, there are lots of things that I liked. I liked flashlights that were super bright, that were indestructible, because I used to like to scuba dive. I like to go out at night. I like to see things. So I bought my wife a fancy tactical flashlight, a tactical flashlight holster for this flashlight, and another beam and a strobe in case she ever got lost at night. And I handed this to my wife, and she says, interesting, dear. She said, what am I supposed to do with this? And I said, you take it with you when you walk in the hospital parking lot. You can use it for this. You can use it for this. And she says, can I return it? And I'm like, huh? I'm like, I spent $200 on this thing. And she said, good, I can buy a lot of shoes now. Because what I thought she wanted versus what she wanted were different things. So when you're in that position, find out what your manager wants from you. Find out what's important to them. Figure out what you can do for them. And then you're going to get a higher salary. And that way you do it with a good relationship, and you'd be surprised how much higher of a salary. Look, I've had people get an extra $100,000 plus a big stock grant for doing this because they positioned it right. Every manager has people that run to them every day. I want more money. I want more money. I want more money. And the people aren't willing to do the work. Bye, 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 bye. Okay, next time there's a layoff, you're laid off, you're laid off, you're laid off. No, I've had people that have come to me and said, Mike, I'm having a new baby. I need to be in a bigger position. What can I do? Okay, now they came to me and I said, okay, here's what I can do to help you. I really need this. This is the skill I can't find. If you can go develop the skill, look, I'll send you the training, but I need you to do this, this, and this outside the training. And they do it. They're getting a raise. They're getting promoted. But that's really the secret. Alonzo, you have any content there? Because you're an executive with lots of experience as well.
Yeah, I couldn't. I think you hit all the bells and whistles, Mike. That's why I'm sitting here listening to you. I think really going for what the old goal when it comes to marketing is you're fulfilling a need that no one else can do. You're going to be able to provide something that they're looking for, and you're going to provide it in mass. So by being that particular professional who is able to provide said skill for your organization that no one else can, you have immediately created you turned yourself into a commodity, and a rare one at that they're going to be willing to compensate you for, commissions, promotions, whatever it is that will keep you in that organization to provide solutions for them. Because the worst nightmare that they could think of is you being not allocated correctly, being unhappy in that position, and you provide solutions for a competitor.
Great perspective there, Alonzo. Please feel free to ask questions, even if Alonzo's sticking around a little longer.
Okay, Denny, I remember you from earlier today. Can you take us through the cloud security engineer? I'm thinking that might be something about the role, but I think they may be interested in the security, like you said, the security piece.
Annie, can you give me a little more information on your goals? There's basically 3 primary roles in security. There's the security design. That's the security architect. And then when it comes to the security engineers, there's 2 sides of it. There are the people that are paid to break into the systems. Your ethical hackers. Sorry, I've got a lot of allergies from my cat. And they're the people that break into your systems and you pay so, and they deliver findings. That is one set of security. The other side of security are the people that actually build the firewalls and set up the systems that actually make the security. So I really need to know what you're doing. Until I hear back for you, or in case you're not here, I'm going to assume you need a defensive security engineer, which is somebody that's going to work for a company or work for a cloud provider and do things. So here's realistically, the architect's going to design the solution, the engineer's going to build it. So what does a security engineer do? Well, they may be running vulnerability scans on systems to see the weaknesses in the system. They may be configuring the firewalls, like the next generation firewalls, which we'll use, like something from Palo Alto, Fortinet, Checkpoint, or Cisco. They may be configuring the, what's the word I'm looking for? The IDS, IPS systems. They could be configuring data loss prevention systems. They could be configuring SIEM, security event monitoring system. They could be configuring and managing the encryption keys that could be used, depending upon where that person could be. They could be setting up and determining the endpoint protection and popping it onto the systems. A cloud security engineer, although usually it would be a sysadmin, but sometimes they work in the identity and access management side. And maybe working with Active Directory, as well as working with some biometric authentication systems, or some multi-factor authentication systems and random number generators and the such. So the engineer is going to be building these things. It is the very, very, very. Now, you're saying AWS security. Demi, there's no such thing as AWS security. There is security. So the security you use in the data center versus the security used in the cloud is going to be the same thing. At the enterprise level, we're probably not going to be using AWS WAF. At the enterprise level, we're going to be using next generation firewalls. So all those things that a security engineer would be doing, I need you to be doing now. And, some of that stuff will be simple security groups and ACLs, but much more about it is going to be configuring those firewalls, configuring those IDS systems, configuring those SIEM systems. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's going to take to make these systems whole. The cloud providers have some nice tools. Have any of you seen a Swiss Army knife? You got a little mini scissors on it, a little bitty wine opener on it, a little bitty knife that on a good day you might be able to slice open an apple with. And has anybody seen a good survival knife that you might want to keep in your bag? It's got a compass in there. Maybe you unscrew it and there's a needle and thread in case you ever had to suture yourself up or fix something along the way. It's got a really sharp blade. So if you had to build chop down a tree and build the shelter with a tree, it's a purpose-built tool. So the cloud and a lot of those cloud tools are very much like Swiss Army knife tools. They have lots of things that are just about good enough. So there's that. And there's times where those good enough native tools are simple, elegant, and wonderful. And there's times where you need something more enterprise grade. But I would recommend you to not think about it as AWS security. First, 98% of organizations are multi-cloud. And when you're multi-cloud, you won't be able to use any of the Azure security stuff or AWS security stuff. You're going to have to use generic tools that work on all cloud providers. So think about being a security engineer. And whether you employ these systems in a data center, like a VMware data center, a Nutanix cloud, an OpenStack cloud, whether you do it on Azure, Google, or Cisco's cloud, or Alibaba's cloud, or Dell's cloud, it's the same thing. So hope that helps. Please feel free to ask more.
Joe, hi, I'm a senior DevOps engineer looking to move on to the solution architect. I've completed the Azure solution certification. What else can I do?
Joe, you're going to need to get training to become an architect. So, and I've worked with lots of engineers and lots of DevOps engineers and gotten them architect jobs. So we have to understand the distinction between what an engineer does and what an architect does. An engineer builds things, an architect designs them. So here's why I say this to you. If I asked you right now, how would you design a financial application that's going to minimize latency? Because 1 millisecond of latency can equal $50 million a year in profit. DevOps engineering will not teach you that. If I told you that I have an airline that's looking for ways to optimize their fuel option purchase costs, and you need to think about how would you design a system that can make better price predictions for their fuel. It have nothing to do with DevOps. Now, that doesn't mean your experience isn't valuable. It's very valuable, but it's in a completely different career. So Swetha was a student of mine that she was a DevOps engineer, and we spent about a year with her. We trained her to be a cloud architect, and Swetha got a beautiful cloud architect job. At the same time, I can tell you I had Harsha. Harsha was a deep cloud engineer with over 10 years experience and a lot of DevOps experience. He came to us 14 months later. We trained him to be an architect. Now, I'm also going to tell you that in the same time, we had Jermaine, and Jermaine never worked in tech before in his life. He was selling landscaping gear, and about 8 months later, we got him hired as an architect. And why would we get Jermaine hired faster than the DevOps engineer? Jermaine was in sales. He was used to selling solutions for people, so it was easier for him. Jawad, really great guy. He came to us. He spent about a year with us. He'd been a cloud engineer for about 6 years. Jawad and Ivan Tamba started at the same time. Ivan Tamba was hired by AWS before Jawad. Now, Jawad is a rock star, but Jawad had that more engineering hands-on thing, and we took the time to develop his presentation skills, his sales skills, and his leadership skills. So how do you go from a nurse to a physician? You go to medical school. How do you go from a paralegal to a lawyer? You go to law school. How do you go from a flight attendant to an airplane pilot? You go to training. So what you're going to need training is as follows. You probably know the tech, and you know the tech really well. This is good. So that's going to ease your burden. Now, when was the last time you led a team of 50 to 100 people? If the answer is no, you're going to need to get those leadership skills. When was the last time you presented to a CIO and convinced them that they needed to spend $1 billion on your technology? That's not something most DevOps engineer or cloud DevOps engineers know, so you're going to need to learn that. When was the last time you built a business case to show the business that the $400 million they're going to sell on your architecture is going to derive $1.6 billion of business value? When was the last time you wrote a thought leadership document to sway an industry? When was the last time you dealt with a retailer that was trying to increase their revenue by 3%? And you're going to have to go back to the drawing board and examine the sales processes, the user interfaces, think about what kind of recommendation engines you can build them, determine the processes for the user and the processes for sales. Again, it goes back into training. You're going to have to go get the training to do it. So here's the thing. Life is cumulative, and every experience you have is going to help you. Here's how I learned architecture, and I'm going to be dead honest with it. I had the best architecture training in the world, and I don't recommend most of you getting the same $200,000 to $300,000 architecture training that I had that took 7 years. I went to school and learned medicine. That's the architect job. You know, Alonzo is my patient for the day. Alonzo, you just came in. Alonzo, you have a sore throat. So let's say Alonzo came into my office today, and I said, Alonzo, what brings you in today? And he says, I have a sore throat. I say, Alonzo, what makes your sore throat better? Drinking tea. I'm like, good, drink more tea. What makes it worse? Well, yelling at my kids. I'm like, well, don't yell at your kids. Alonzo wouldn't yell at his kids. He's an incredible father. But, you know, that's the other. And I said, what else makes it worse? And he says, talking a lot. I'm like, okay, well, don't talk so much. And I say, Alonzo, can I examine you? He says, of course, Mike. So I stick a flashlight in his eyes, and I see his pupils are reactive. I stick an otoscope in his ears. I stick an otoscope in his nose. Now I take out my tongue depressor, my flashlight. I say, stick your tongue out and say, ah. I look at his throat, and I'm like, wow, your throat's red. So I say, Alonzo, can I culture you? And he says, of course. I stick a little culture thing, and it comes back. You have beta heliumetalytic strep group B, meaning he's got strep throat. So poof. Now I've got a diagnosis of strep throat, and now I build a plan. Now, that is an architecture. Now, what would I do in the business world? Alonzo is my CIO. Alonzo, what are your business goals, business pain points, business challenge? And he tells me. The next thing I do, can I examine your systems? And he says, of course. So I bring in some engineers, and they examine the systems. I make a diagnosis, and I build a plan. Doctor interview a patient. Architect interview a patient, the client. Doctor assess the systems. Architect assess the systems. Doctor make a diagnosis. Architect make the diagnosis. Doctor come up with a plan, usually called a prescription. Architect come up with a plan called an architecture. It's the same job. So if we look at the role of a physician, if we look at the role of an attorney, it's the same job. The lawyer says, okay, what brings you in? Oh, here's your legal problem. You got a speeding ticket. Okay, let me go look at the tickets. Let me go look at the law. Let me look at the legal case precedents. I have a diagnosis. You got a speeding ticket. My plan is to go to court for you, to see if that officer shows up, to question the veracity of his testing tools that he used, like his radar, and then try to get you out of it. It's the same job. So if we look at these roles, there are planning roles and there are doing roles. Engineering is a doing role. Architecture is a planning role. So I hope that makes sense.
From Sinso,
What is the difference?
What is the difference between a cloud practitioner and a cloud architect?
So first, there's no such thing in the entire world as a cloud practitioner.
Nope.
That is a made-up certification from Amazon that says, here's an intro to an intro to an intro to an intro to junior level cloud something. It's no job. No, it's not a job at all. A cloud architect is an executive who goes out there and designs solutions to optimize clients' business performance. No relation to a certification. So one is a certification and one is a career that, pays on average about what, $220,000. Alonzo, you do the research each day.
Please repeat, Mike. I had a bit
Completely
of a glitch.
Different. I mean, I know plenty of cloud architects with $500,000 to $800,000 roles, and I know that we're seeing, $150,000 to $200,000 for our people that have never worked in tech on average to get their first jobs out through our training. What are you noticing? Because you look at average salaries of cloud architects each day. What's the average as of last week? The last time you looked at it?
The average of last week, it's upticking almost to 175,000 to walk in the door.
Okay.
So imagine and look at it this way, as Mike always illustrates, there is a range, and it's not. And think about what you could be getting, what type of compensation you can get. Understand that what they're willing to give you is not based off of what you know, but how well you've done in your interview. So
yeah,
you could get a tremendous amount of far more than what they can even. It could be off the charts, depending on how much they need you and what they're willing to give based off your performance. Or at the bare minimum, if you checked a couple of boxes and they really need people, you're going to still win. But ultimately, ensure that you have the right tools, the right competency, understand how to successfully navigate and provide them with such a memorable performance. They will equate it to your everyday performance and be willing to compensate you as such.
Yeah, and I'll give you some examples so you can see the kind of ranges on these jobs. So I was a principal architect in less than 2 years, which means it's totally possible. But I focused on becoming an architect, and I focused, not focusing anything as it pertains to engineering. I focused on my job. So, and I've recently gotten someone a job that paid very close to this at Google. So I want you to see this. So Tyrone, please share this. And this is the kind of range that's different. So here's a principal architect at Google. I want you to, and this is straight off a Glassdoor, I want you to see that pay range of $394 to $677. That is based on your business acumen, your leadership skills, your sales skills, your executive presence, and your interviewing skills. That's the difference between a $400,000 architect and a $700,000 architect. I'll show you other jobs. The more business acumen you know, the more you will earn. Average salary on salary.com is about $558,000 a year for people with strong business acumen. Here's a job that requires strong business acumen. If I shared the right one. Tyrone, share this. Typical pay of a senior director at a Cisco or a Palo Alto is about that $550,000 a year. But look at that range, that 417 to 698. If you're the manager that can go walk in there and give a speech and motivate an audience to go buy $1 billion solution like I've always done, you're going to earn that. Azure, AWS, as it stands right now, is the lowest paying of all the cloud companies. But even theirs, still look at that principal architect salary. Tyrone, if you want to share that. You can see the average is still 372, but the range is 291 to 491. So What determines that? How desirable you are to the employer, how good your leadership skills are, what kind of an outcome you can give your client to her. And the outcome that you can give your client, the amount of business optimization you can give your client is not based on your tech certifications. It's not. It's based upon your business knowledge and what you can do. I want you to look at this. Alonzo just became a chief information officer. And instead of being my chief marketing officer, he's the chief information officer. And I'm going to give you the tale of two different architects. And I want you to see his reaction. Now, hi, Alonzo. It's Mike Gibbs. I want to let you know I've got 25 years experience, 150 cloud networking and data certifications. And I looked at all your requirements and I created a new architecture for you. And I'm sure it's going to make a difference. Look at his facial expression. That's like my wife if I did something really wrong. And that's a terrifying look. Now I'm going to come in as a different kind of architect. Hi, Alonzo. It's Mike Gibbs. How are you today?
Good, Mike.
Alonzo, I have to tell you, I enjoyed our meeting. I want to let you know once I left, I actually met with all the department heads you have, as well as your CFO and your CEO. And I got a really good understanding with the business. After I understood what I said, I went back and I built a team. On my team, I had some security architects that worked for Palo Alto Networks at one point in their life. I had some Linux gurus that used to work at Red Hat. I had some network architects from Cisco join. I hired some data scientists that used to work at NVIDIA on this team. I brought in 16 DevOps engineers because we want to be able to automate it for cloud engineers and an IAM architect. Together, we spent 9 months putting this architecture for you. It's an architecture that's delivered similar transformation for other businesses like yours. And we believe this can provide a 12% increase in top line revenue. Would you like to have a second discussion? Now he's interested.
I'd like to read more about it. Yeah.
The reason I wanted to show you this is the one guy, the first Mike, hey, I'm the techie. No executive cares what one person can do. As the African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So that's the key. That's the key. That's what the client's looking for. And that's the difference between an $800,000 architect, who was the second architect that you saw, and a $140,000 person trying to get an architecture job. That's the difference.
Nikhil, what will be the roadmap, Mike, for the cloud engineer according to you, sir, from beginning to landing a position?
Okay, so the roadmap for a cloud engineer is very similar to the roadmap it would be for a nurse. And I can give you many examples of cloud engineers we trained. And here's why I say it's the same. Cloud engineering and cloud architecture have nothing to do with each other than they both use the cloud. A cloud engineer is a very strong technical expert. They know the strengths and the weaknesses of all these individual services in the cloud. They're going to be a whiz at writing a Terraform script, the Python script, the Bash shell script. They're going to be experts at going into these systems, installing applications. They are the techie's techie. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for the cloud engineer. Now, here's your job as a cloud architect. Go interview a client about their business goals, which means you need to understand business. Go examine their business processes. Help them re-architect their business processes. Go bring in a team of people to learn about their network, their data, their security, their IAM, their AI goals and what they have had. Now go lead that team of all these professionals to go design a solution. Now take that solution and go and assess the organization's readiness for change. Go out there and talk and take the solution and bring it to key stakeholders to get their buy-in. And what you do for finance, sadly, will affect sales. So you're going to have to now negotiate between these individual department heads, re-architect your thing, write up your architecture document, present your architecture document, sell your architecture document, respond to any RFIs, RFPs, RFQs, like a request for information, request for proposal, request for pros. Then sell that thing, present that thing, and negotiate it, which is a completely different job. So you will need training. and you will need to learn architecture and be taught architecture by someone. Now, will you be advantaged in terms of knowing the technology better? Yes. And I'll give you examples. So I had a principal, St. John. He had a big tech background, like 20 years. We trained him, and about a year later, he got a job as an architect. And Arun, wow, this guy was really smart. He had a big, actually, no, I was thinking the wrong. I was thinking of Praveen. Praveen had been a big data architect for about 20 years. Took him about a year to go from big data architect to cloud architect after our training. But we had a lot of tech people that came to us. Milad, for example, was an engineer for decades, but it took us about a year to train him to be an architect, because an engineer and an architect is a different thing. Who else can I think of that was really technical? I mentioned Jawad. He was a cloud engineer. We retrained him and got him to his goal.
You'll mention Arun, correct?
Depend. Yeah. For example, Depend had been an engineer for, probably 10 years, but we retrained him, and a year later he was hired as an architect. Alex Wood was an engineer with all kinds of experience for decades. Again, it took us about the same year to get him trained as an architect. Now, why do I say this? Because Noah Parker was a social worker, and 8 months later, he was a cloud architect. Nicole Chow got our job, and, she was a teacher first. Vladimir was a college student, and he got hired by North Highland in less than time than it took our cloud engineers. So it really doesn't matter where your background is. You are changing jobs. You are changing careers. Will you be advantaged along the way because you know more of the tech? The answer is yes. Architecture is a planning role. Engineering is a doing role. If I have a nurse that's been a nurse for 20 years and they decide to become a doctor, they still have to go to medical school. Now, will that nurse have a better advantage because they know a lot more than the people that are going fresh out of college? Yes. So your life is cumulative, but you will need to be trained how to sell. You will need to be trained how to present. You will need to be trained on how to build a business case. You will need to know how to design and lead a proof of concept, because you're not going to be doing the proof of concept. You're going to need to lead it. You will need to learn how to write a thought leadership document. You will need to learn how to write an architectural document that explains the systems and how the system works to an executive audience, a management audience, and then a technical audience. And I bet you know how to do it for the technical audience. So all in all, it's great stuff. You have a good background, but you're going to have to get architecture training because you're changing careers. The same way that a flight attendant that wanted to become an airplane pilot would need training. But here's the thing, you can do it. And if you already have good sales skills, you'll be there. Because remember, we're not about doing things. We're about putting the pieces and parts together. So one of the things that I can remember asking a lot of engineers, and I had a cloud engineer, or lots of cloud engineers, and I asked one of the cloud engineers the architecture of the server. And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you've been setting up these virtual machines for decades. Could you talk to me about the processor architecture? This server has 2 CPUs. Each CPU has 96 cores, and it has this type of a level 1, level 2, and level 3 cache. How does that affect the CPU's performance?" And I then asked that cloud engineer, let's talk about the PCI bus on this server. How does that pertain to the number of GPUs that you can actually put in that system without decreasing your performance? And everything else that was related to it, and the person couldn't answer. But an architect has to be able to answer that. All my architects can. Because engineering is how-to. Architecture is planning. If you've got more, we can go back to it. And I'll run a little late because I know I'm giving you some detailed answers intentionally today. I want everybody to be truly helped.
From Leonard, Mike, will you say it's business skills and CXO relevancy that differentiates a cloud architect from an enterprise architect?
So, yeah, it's the enterprise architect is going to have more business acumen, more executive presence, more CXO relevancy, and much more knowledge of business process reengineering. But pretty much that's the main difference. And we teach so much of it, Leonard, that I've had so many people take on enterprise architecture jobs after our training, like Angelo Muniz took us on an enterprise architect job. Wallace Sagana took on an enterprise architect job. Jermaine Houston took on an enterprise architect job. So, and it's really, that's the main difference. Yes, Leonard. And Leonard, if I remember correctly, you come from a medical background. Specifically, I think you come also have worked in public health. And a lot of those public health things that you need to do are very enterprise architecture-like.
Daylight. Hi, Mike. My goal is to work on AWS architecture. I enjoy cloud and I love the science. I went to Coursera, saw ads on YouTube, and decided to try it out. Coursera offered a limited AWS in medical.
Yeah, the things on Coursera have nothing to do with what you would actually do as an architect. They're more about how can I get you to pass the certification, which is more related to the name of the service and how to configure that service. I'll tell you, most of our students, the people that come to us, and I'll tell you, I've had people that spend a year or two focusing on certifications from Coursera and Udemy, and then they come to us. And the biggest thing we have to get them to do is to forget what they've learned. Because in many cases, they were taught like this vendor's excitement about the vendor's technology, and we have to get them to forget it and then learn the technology from scratch. Daniel Bosa was a good example of that. Daniel Bosa came to us. He had spent $35,000 on some horrible boot camp. He came to one of my webinars and said, nobody's willing to hire me. And I interviewed the kid, and I felt so bad for him because he spent a lot of money. Anyway, he bought our course. And then what he did is he attended for the first week. And then he found some silly providers, AWS Solutions Architect Professional Certification. He comes back 8 weeks later and says, Mike, I'm ready to get hired. Go refer me to a recruiter. And I said, Daniel, you don't even know what you don't know yet. And he said, what do you mean? I said, okay, Mr. AWS Solutions Architect Professional, how would you do this? Design this. And he went blank. How would you do this? And you design it. How would you do this? And then I said, what is the difference in the way that a next generation firewall works versus AWS WAF? And he went, huh? I said, okay, now forget everything that you just wasted your last 8 weeks on. Come follow the course. 6 months later, he was hired by, what do you call it? JP Morgan Chase. And there's a video of him. So I hope that kind of helps. So Alonzo's muted here, so
I got it, Mike. How can organizations ensure seamless integration and interoperability between different cloud platforms?
Well, there's a lot of things that go into it, and that's something that I spend 800 hours with in our architect program, not 5 minutes. But I'll give you a couple tips. Don't use proprietary stuff. What does that mean? It means things like Amazon Aurora or Microsoft Cosmos or DynamoDB or Elastic Compute Service. Don't use them. Why? Because I can put Apache Cassandra in all clouds, and I have no interoperability challenges whatsoever. Don't waste your time using Azure security stuff or AWS security stuff. Go out there and get an industrial grade firewall from, say, Palo Alto or Cisco or Fortinet, and put those same firewall policies in both clouds. Don't use an Amazon Elastic Container Service for container orchestration. And while you're at it, don't use an Elastic Kubernetes service either. Because if you've got your systems in both clouds and the AWS cloud goes down, you have no control plane for Azure. But you can use IBM OpenShift, which is a managed Kubernetes cluster, which you can stick in 3 different clouds. So it's really about using open standards. Now, that's a good news anyway, because you tend to use better products. So don't use any from their proprietary thing, which means 50% of the stuff in your certifications, please don't use. So if you went through the free AWS Solutions Architect training that we did, when we went through it, we're like, this is great technology, but you probably shouldn't use it 98% of the time. This is also great technology, but you can't use it 98% of the time for this reason. So that's really the biggest thing. Use industry standard protocols, and you should be good to go. Industry standard databases. You can stick the Oracle database in 3 clouds. You can stick the Microsoft SQL database in 3 clouds. You can stick MySQL in 3 clouds, but you can't use Amazon Aurora. Oh, Amazon Kinesis. It's great for streaming data, right? But if you've got a data pipeline on and you're dealing with multiple clouds, Apache Kafka works. So don't use any of the cloud provider proprietary anything, and it's going to be very simple to get these things to work.
And always remember to never have a single point of failure either, right, Mike?
Never, no single points of failure.
Adinye, I am currently into vulnerability management. I would like to learn more about AWS security hands-on.
Excellent. Go out there and go to a security vendor and learn security. Go to Cisco and get a CCNP or a CCIE in security, for example. You will learn security. Go to Palo Alto and learn security or get security training. The things that you're going to be doing in AWS security are going to be most likely these big enterprise things. So I kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So don't learn AWS security, learn cloud security. You know, I'm going to go teach my favorite intro to security certifications. I'm going to do it free. It'll be the CISSP certification. That will teach you security. And then it's about knowing. So let me kind of give you the way you train a doctor, because this is the best way to become an architect. So when you train a doctor, you don't say, here's all your Pfizer drugs, Lipitor, Zithromax, and this. You train your doctors and your nurse practitioners in classes of drugs. Okay, we have beta blockers. Beta blockers work by doing this. And that way, if it's tenormin or propranolol or Inderal or low pressure, the doctor knows what it is. If you know data loss prevention, you can make it work in any cloud. It's just choosing which vendors you use. If you know security event management, it works in any cloud. If you understand how to design a demilitarized zone, you can do it in any cloud. I would ask you this. Would you go to school to learn how to drive a Toyota if Toyota had silly names like an elastic vector changer and then an elastic speeder up or slower downer device and an elastic breaker device and an elastic door opener device and an elastic window opener? And they were all silly names that somebody made up. Or would you go learn how to drive a car? And that way, when you've got to rent a van, you drive the van. Your buddy has a Mercedes, you drive the Mercedes. Your other buddy has a BMW, you drive it. Your buddy has a Toyota, they get drunk, you drive the Toyota car. And your sister has a Honda, and you can drive their car. Which would you rather to do? Get out of AWS and into cloud. And then you will have any job you want anywhere. Then it's just a matter of learning, okay, these are the offerings. So you could get coffee from a lot of stores. And in Greek, we call it cafe. And, in English, we call it coffee. Some other people call it mocha. Some other people call it Java. Some other people call it, but it's the same coffee. I want you to understand what you want, and you'll be good to go everywhere. And great questions there.
Pen and paper. How do cloud providers navigate the complex landscapes of international data privacy laws, such as GDPR? When data is stored across multiple jurisdictions. Yeah.
I would suggest you ask the question differently. You can't worry about what the cloud providers do. I mean, you have to. And you really have to understand it, but you need to understand your issues and how you're going to secure things. Because if you design a security that doesn't comply with GDPR, and you don't have your data sovereignty, for example, and you're required to, and you're counting on the cloud provider to do it and they failed, you're getting sued. I don't think you want that, right? So the bigger issue is it's up to you. So when you're a network architect and you've got to look at the networking coming into your building, and a cloud architect needs to know this too. And of course, we teach this to our cloud architect. And coming into building, AT&T has a link and Verizon has a link. You have to look at the fiber underneath the ground. You got to look at those fiber blueprints. Because what if you've got a single conduit or a pipe and AT&T and Verizon are coming into that same pipe, and you decided to make your wide area network redundant by using an AT&T and a Verizon link in case AT&T or Verizon has a problem. And then a backhoe goes and digs through the street and actually creates a hole and breaks the fiber of AT&T and Verizon. You've got nothing. So when you actually design these cloud architectures, in many cases, you have to look at the fiber blueprints under the building that's connecting to the cloud. And okay, this one's coming into this copper and this conduit, and this one's coming out another one, and those are the choices you use. So you will need to go to the cloud provider, and you will need to determine where they replicate their data, because maybe they replicate it to a country that you're not allowed to be in. So that is up to you to go ask your vendors, where do they replicate, find out where they replicate, and then you can decide your architecture accordingly. Now, there are also sovereign clouds that are out there where they're guaranteed to keep your data in a certain region. So you need to go ask them what they do, how and where they back up the data, where they replicate the data. And that's one of the reasons why pen paper, that organizations have like the government cloud, where it's only government stuff that's on the single cloud, and they have other high security clouds and micro clouds and things that are there, because that's going to be up to you. How do they do it? Sometimes they're good enough to keep their data sovereign. Sometimes they got policies, and because they're dealing, you got to remember the cloud provider is dealing for the average organization. Average. You have to design for yours. That's the secret. So that's a great question you asked.
I did like that.
It's good thinking too.
Pooja, what are the steps, Mike, I can take to go from being a cloud engineer to becoming a cloud architect?
Get training to become a cloud architect. And I think you were here when I answered the last time, so I'm going to keep it relatively short. I have a book, a free ebook that you can read on how to become a cloud architect. Download that. And we also have completely free webinars where we're at. But if you want to go to a physician to an airplane pilot, you've got to get training. But that's the good news, Pooja. Anyone can get any job they desire with the right training. There is nothing holding you back. Nothing. Nothing. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. There's actually a really critical question that is a very dangerous question that people don't understand, and I want to bring it in. It's from Superior Chattery, and he talks about the inequities in pay in an organization, and I want to address that quickly because it's a very important thing. And then we'll go back in order. Tyrone, the question is, why is there so much inequities in pay among almost every organization? So after coaching people to earn a lot more than their competition, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars more than competition in some cases, people start looking at the inequity. So let's say I have two architects next to each other. So architect one is a technical rock star, right? And they are in a pre-sales role. And they're the best techie you have. And they're able to sell $10 million a year of product and solutions. Architect two isn't as good as the other one, but their sales skills are so good they can sell $100 million of services that year. 10 million, 100 million. Now, if you work for a vendor and there's a 59% margin, in one case, the person brought in $5.9 million of profit for the business. In the other case, they brought in $59 million of profit. I would bring in, a couple hundred millions of dollars a year of profit for an organization. If I brought in $300 million of profit and I wanted $800,000, are they going to say no to me? No. They're going to say, is that it, Mike? What else can we do? Can we buy a house in Palm Beach? Because when you can bring in money, you're going to get paid a lot. A lot. So what people think are the same are not actual inequities. I've got one person that's willing to work 16 hours a day and another person that's willing to work 8. Guess what? I'm going to pay more to the person that's doing 16 hours a day of work than the person that's doing 8. Now, I got 2 Alonzos here. Alonzo, I need an angry, cranky face. Angry, cranky face, Alonzo.
Okay.
So now I got a person that looks like that Alonzo face right now. Alonzo, can you do this for me? No. Now, he's the first person that I get laid off, and I pay him the least on my team until he quits. Now, give me Alonzo the smiley face. Alonzo, can you do this for me?
Definitely.
Okay, now he's worth more than me.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's
Mike,
that.
tell them what Christina says about how people get these jobs, about being fungible and being positive to work on.
I have a really great CEO of a national tech recruiting firm that I have on my YouTube channel a lot. She's a good friend. She got me in my second tech job. She's placed so many people I know over the years. She's a rock star. Christina Marino over at ITXO. She says she deals with one bank and they're willing to pay anything for smart and fungible people, meaning people that are smart, that are willing to learn, that will do anything they can to succeed. That's what matters. So what you think is the same may not actually be the same, because what the hiring manager considers something valuable is you're not. Business acumen is a much more valuable skill than programming. I didn't say it was. I didn't make up these rules, but a programmer's $120,000 job, $150,000. This person with strong business acumen is a $500,000 job. Keep that in the back of your mind.
Like the essay, once I have a solutions architect professional, should I focus on career movement or projects, or maybe
what's your goal? A solution architect professional is just a certification. And if your goal is to be a cloud admin, it's a great certification. If your goal is to be an architect, you better learn how to be an architect. If your goal is to be a strong cloud engineer, you have to realize that this certification is minimal. You're going to need to be an engineer, lots of Python skills, lots of infrastructure as code skills, lots of Linux skills, lots of automation skills like bash shell scripting, that kind of thing. So it's all going to be dependent upon what you're doing. But I will tell you this, is the certification should be the last thing you should do, not the first. I have someone like Jeffrey West, who we got hired at Cali, and it was his first tech job. And the only certification he had was a cloud practitioner. I had Robert Welch, and you wouldn't believe the type of security architect job we got him. And this was a very good high-paying job. I don't think he had any cloud certifications. Delroy Batt, when we got him hired as a cloud security architect at CDW, didn't have any certifications. So the key is skills first, certifications later. Here's the secret. The average cloud architect earns $1,000 a day, average. If you actually train and learn the network, the data center, the cloud, the way we would teach it, you can pass that solutions architect professional in a week because you already know it underlying. Or you could go and take that solutions architect professional, like most people do, spend 6 months on it because they don't understand the underlying technology, finish the exam, pass the exam, and have no valuable skills whatsoever. But you can get hired with no certifications if you've got the right skills. But nobody's going to hire you just for having certifications. So determine the role you want, get skilled in the role you want, and then get the certification. Here's what a certification is. It's a bow on a gift. Now, and I'll tell you, I've interviewed 6,000 people. Here's what happens when I see 6,000, somebody with lots of certifications. I interview them. And on the surface, they've got this pretty box with beautiful wrapping paper and a beautiful bow. And when I start asking questions, I open the box and there's nothing in there. It's an empty box that's beautifully wrapped. Now, I don't know about you, but if you would decide to wrap a box and make it look pretty and give it to your wife or husband, whatever your case is, generally speaking, they're not going to be happy. Now, I can buy a box. There's these shoes called Manila Blahniks that my wife always liked. And those shoes with the red on the bottom, I don't understand about it. They're expensive, but she likes them. I could hand her a box. I could hand her 2 shoes and say they're new. I bought them for you, and she'd be happy. Now, if I took the box of those Manila Blahniks and then I put those things, or Louis Vuittons exactly, and I put it in a nice box and I put a really pretty bow and wrapping paper, it makes a better gift. The certifications are the pretty bow and the wrapping paper on you. The substance is what gets you hired, is what's inside the box.
Well said, Mike. And it's also a great negotiator for when you are talking about salary as well. So if you're in a position where you're interviewing and you're checking all the boxes, somehow you've answered every question that they've had beyond their expectations, but your personality doesn't yield the same fervor as your technical competency, it's not going to get you far. Because imagine you have someone, quite frankly, a know-it-all, but they're insufferable and you can't work with them. How is that cohesion going to be for the team? How is the overall positivity and energy of the team going to be when they see know-it-all Alonzo come through the door, shooting down ideas, and I got to deal with you every day for the duration of my career with this company? Not so good.
Exactly.
From Pooja, can I go from being a site reliability engineer to a cloud architect? And what steps can I take, Mike, to make this transition?
Of course you can. Lenny Burnett was our video editor, and we trained him, and he's working as a cloud architect. It's his first tech job. Balwinder Kerr was a stay-at-home mom, but we trained her, and she's working for Microsoft as a solutions architect. Navina, I don't remember her background, but I think she was new to tech, and she got hired at JP Morgan Chase. So if we can get people that have never worked in tech, Daniel Bosa was a high school dropout, hired by JP Morgan Chase as a solution architect, and Jennifer Ema was hired by them, and she was a mental health tech. Of course you can go from a site reliability engineer. You can also go from a teacher, a nurse, an airplane pilot, to become a cloud architect with the right training. Of course you can. But your last job is a completely different job, so you're going to need to get training. So go out there and get the right training, and you'll be there. And if you train for us in our Cloud Architect Career Development Program, it's going to be the cheapest thing that you can do out there. Because realistically speaking, I don't want you to spend the $200,000 to $300,000 that I had to develop these skills to be really good at the high end.
Yeah.
Lonzo's got a $150,000 education. Chris on my team has a $150,000 education. You don't need that, but that's how I learned these business skills, and that's how I moved from engineering to architecture. It was the business skills. So get training. Have someone teach you how do you design an end-to-end architecture. Have someone teach you how to evaluate the network, the compute, the storage. Have someone teach you how to evaluate an organization's business processes. Have someone teach you how to give a presentation to go close a $100 million deal. Have someone teach you how to build a business case to show the customer that the value of the solution is greater than its cost. Have someone teach you how to create thought leadership. Have someone teach you how to create an executive briefing. Have someone teach you how to lead an RFI, RFP, and RFQ response. Have someone teach you how to use architectural frameworks. And when you're done with that, you'll have a beautiful cloud architect job that you will love. And anyone can do it. But the key is you are in a doing career, and you're going to be applying for a planning career. So you're going to have to be taught them from someone. I'm not saying it has to be us. You can go to get an MBA and learn half of these business skills and do what I did. That's what I did. I got sent multiple times to speak courses at the company. Cisco spent about 20 grand on it. I had an executive coach. I had CXO relevancy training. I had leadership training. And then poof, Mike, guess what? Now you're an executive architect. I'm like, okay, this is great. But you can do that, or you can take a course like ours, or you can go to an MBA program. You can get an executive coach. You can get presentation skills training. But go out there and get that, because that's going to be the necessary thing. One job doesn't teach you someone else's. And that's the biggest tech career mistake I see every day, and it saddens me. People think that they're going to go to help desk and they're automatically be an engineer. No, when you're trained for help desk, you are stuck in help desk, and you need just as much branding to get out of help desk as you would somewhere else. I got cloud engineers. They take about a year to train to get them hired, because they know how to build, and now they got to learn how to design. Now, they know the tech better than anybody else. I'm going to tell you that right now. Those cloud engineers and site reliability engineers, they're rock stars with tech. But when I told you that, let's say I told you we've got a bank that's got a $3 billion a year opportunity through an optimization of an algorithmic trading system. First, you need to understand the business of banking. Then you need to understand the workflow of banking. Then you need to understand how an algorithmic trading system needs to work. Then you need to think about all the network, the data security that are there, the AI architecture. It's not going to be you that designs that. You're going to have to go build a team and lead that team and then document it, present it back, sell it back, negotiate it, manage the stakeholders. It's a new skill, but that's okay. One of the greatest things about people is we can learn.
And you got a great community that supports you as well.
Yeah.
So I've been in a lot of different ones. I can go back to those old school Linux Academy days years ago. But when you think about, it's more than just a group, it's a community of people who are willing to help you. We're a global community at that. And there's tons of times where people even meet out in public in their respective neighborhoods to talk about cloud and so much. And we're always protective of each other. So you not only will get great development training, but you're going to have a great environment with like-minded people as well.
Yeah. And like I said, Alonzo came, he did that Linux Academy stuff. And when he was done, he was like, okay, he came to me and we retrained him. We got him hired and I begged him to come back. I'm pretty loyal about the people I like to have on my team.
Marif, Mike, if you have a 2 decades career and you have a system administrator grown in your role from company to company, how do we portray this in our resume?
Well, it's going to depend on your goal career. If your goal career is architecture, we're going to have to minimize the sysadmin role. Wait, what? And okay, so let me kind of make this clear. The role of an architect looks a lot more like Alonzo, that executive, that calm presenter. The role of the sysadmin is the techie that kind of adds users and those things and patches. So the first thing you're going to have to do is rebrand yourself. You're then going to have to learn what you did. Now, in the roles of what you did, you're going to have to summarize what you did and turn them into the bigger, more important things. For example, if you patched Ubuntu systems or Red Hat systems all day long, that's not interesting to me. However, if you created a process that automated system patching, which reduced the downtime by 14%, or reduced the labor overhead by 14%, I'm interested. If you created a new IAM strategy that could reduce the amount of time or set up an IAM federation between Active Directory and something else, which reduced the IAM overhead and the burden of timing, which again optimized those process, again, it's interesting. So pull out the interesting things of those roles. Pull out the things that made a difference in the business. On one of your first jobs, sure, have all that techie stuff that's there to show that you know it. But I need you to pull out the bigger things, the things that matter. I mean, I don't care if someone knows how to type a sudo apt-get update or a yum update. I don't care about that at all. But I do care if you know how to build a high-performance cluster with a certain type of Linux. That is interesting to me. If you know how to set up all the tools and systems that are necessary for an organization to run machine learning on Ubuntu, that might be interesting to me. So talk about the big stuff. And what you actually did. And try to show some transition in between the careers. So it's not the same job that you've had for the last 20 years. Maybe you started teaching people in your roles. Maybe you started leading people in your roles. Maybe you started doing some kind of a training program in your role. Hope that makes sense to you. So highlight the bigger, more valuable things. And if you are in the same role for 20 years, especially if it's not at the same company, be able to explain why you stayed in that role. What was it about that role that you liked? Why did you love that role, which is why you stayed there for so long? Because I've got a lot of respect for systems administrators. What was his name? Julius Kabuka. He was one of our students that was a systems administrator that we ultimately got hired on the IBM cloud as an architect.
Man.
Julius Kabuka, yeah.
Yeah.
He was from Ghana, really nice guy. Yeah, Julius Kabuka. But I've worked with lots of sysadmins, but kind of keep that in the back of your mind.
Okay, Mike, from Adini,
Yeah.
how much do you charge to train someone to become a solutions architect?
So, and our course is normally $24.99. which is about 2 to 3 days pay for the average cloud architect. Because we had this boot camp, I asked my team what is the cheapest price we could potentially offer as the company based upon our staffing at this time. And they said 40% off. So it'll be whatever 40% off is of $24.99, which is probably $16.50. I'm doing the math in my head right now. My team typically does this. I focus on training people. I focus on speaking to other employers, speaking to their executives, speaking to recruiters. I speak more to the press. And I love to teach, so I do a lot of teaching. I don't focus that much on what we actually charge people. But I can tell you that cost is far less than it would ever cost you to try to train these things on your own. For example, if you were to go to Speakeasy for a week to work on presentation skills, and I highly recommend them, they're great. That training would be $3,500 to $4,000 for just 1 week. And that's just one component of what we teach. So I hope that makes sense. It's the least we can possibly charge and still manage to operate and have talent. So, I don't have people like, Udemy would have, where somebody's never learned and worked in the field and doesn't know what they're teaching courses. I have 3 MBAs teaching business acumen. I have 2 PhD business school professors that teach an MBA programs. I have cloud architects, network architects, AI architects, enterprise architects teaching in this course. And we're talking about people that work for big organizations. I teach the majority of this course so I can keep the costs down, and I love to teach, but that's what we do. It's less than 2 days pay for our average graduate. Now, Suleiman, and I know lots of people with the Suleiman name, you just asked the most dangerous question out there. What are the things recruiters look for in entry-level roles? Recruiters do not look for entry-level roles. And Suleiman, I can encourage you to get any job, and I can tell you, but if you're looking for an entry-level role, you're not going to be happy. So I want you to train for a bigger job and get a bigger job. Here's why there's no such thing as an entry-level role. Okay, so normally speaking, here's what we would do. We would hire entry-level people to basically click a few buttons on the management console or rack and stack a few servers. Now, in today's world, watch this. I'm gonna create a script by knowing nothing about Terraform. And by the way, Claude 3.5 is a much better tool for this. But watch this. Create a Terraform script to launch 1,000 EC2 instances with 32 cores and 256 gigabyte DRAM with 1 TB EBS volumes with 10,000 IOPS. And this is why I'm going to tell you never to train for entry-level roles. So immediately out of nowhere, I type this in, and it's literally giving me the script. And it's telling me what the resources are, the type of systems that they're at, the volume size. Here's the code. And it's going to tell me even what to tune. And it's done in less than a minute. And I don't need anybody to know anything to do this other than how to tune it. So I want you to realize the power of that. That little thing, which I just did in AI in 2 minutes, and I've never written a Terraform script in my life other than with AI to prove the point. That just replaced what 50 intro-level people we used to do as cloud admins clicking boxes. That, done in 30 seconds. So now I want you to think about what's going on with entry-level roles. Entry-level roles mean the company has to hire you when you don't have the skills and they have to train you. Which means, how do I train somebody for an entry-level role? I dedicate 6 months of a $150,000 employee to train someone for an entry-level role. Do you know how long the average entry-level employee stays in a job? 6 to 9 months, which means I have to spend $75,000 to $100,000 to train somebody that's going to go work for my competition. So there are no entry-level roles. And if you look on our channel years ago, we talked about why you should never prepare for an entry-level role, because you won't get one, and there are none. So instead, I've never had an entry-level role. And my students don't take entry-level role. They take cloud architect roles, enterprise architect roles, and roles that pay 150 or more. So I don't do that. So don't train for an entry-level role. Want to be a cloud architect? Take the kind of training we have and go get trained as a cloud architect, and you stay in our program until you're hired. Want to become a cloud engineer? Go do it, and here's how you do it. Want to be a cloud engineer? You learn Linux, and you learn it good. You learn Python, and you learn it well. You learn Terraform, and you learn it well. You learn systems administration on Windows and Linux and how to write Bash shell scripts and Windows PowerShell scripts, and you learn it well. You want to be a cloud engineer? You learn those DevOps tools, and you learn them well. Then you get 2 or 3 certifications, then intro-level certification like the AWS Solutions Architect Professional. Maybe while you're at it, a Red Hat certified engineer for the cloud engineer. Maybe we'll add one more like a Kubernetes certification, and you go out there with 3 big certifications and real skills, and you will get a cloud engineering job that'll pay you $120,000 a year. And it'll take you less time to learn those skills to develop yourself. It'll take you less time to train as a cloud architect with us and get your first cloud architect job, or less time to really build these good cloud engineering skills for a cloud engineer job than it will for you to go find an entry-level role. I hire people without experience all the time. I never hire entry-level people. So what's the difference? The difference is hiring somebody that's never worked in the field that's got good, strong skills is someone that I can add to my team. Hiring someone with entry-level skills, I just don't need them. I mean, why would I hire them? I have to pay to train them, and I don't have any work for them because we use cloud computing now, and I can use one DevOps engineer with a Terraform script can replace 50 entry-level cloud admins. So that's okay. You don't have to worry about entry level. There are no rules that say you got to start at the mailroom and work your way to the top, or start your way in admin and work your way to the top. There's none.
Those days are
Alonzo,
over.
how many people have you seen that we trained both when we had cloud engineering programs and cloud architecture programs that took senior roles as the first job?
We've lost count. So case in point, we've had people, imagine you were retail, selling shoes. You were a salesperson for Kleenex or something of that nature. Imagine if you were someone who worked on sailboats, and then the next position that you jumped into was an enterprise role, a senior solutions architect position. So those days, those old school days of having to work your way out of the mailroom on up, or having to checklist positions to get to an architecture role, are over, because those positions did not afford you. They only afforded you incremental experience that encompassed the entire role of a cloud architect. Now you have that opportunity here with the full scope, the full spectrum of what it takes to become a cloud architect at your fingertips, which is how you're able to springboard out of whatever role that you have right now into a position of being a cloud architect, cloud security, cloud networking, enterprise architect, generative architect, and so on.
Yeah. And if we don't teach engineering careers, and I don't teach engineering careers because of the risk of AI taking their jobs. No. We teach architecture careers because you can't replace an architect with AI, because of the amount of discussions we have with people, the teams we have to lead, the presentations we have to do, the management of stakeholders, and those things. So architects get more jobs with AI because AI is a new tool, whereas engineering gets losses. But whatever field you want, I promise you there's a place for you, but don't try to get an entry-level job. Yeah, go out there and do the hard stuff.
Yeah. Aim for the sky, land in the stars. Don't shortchange yourself just because you feel like you don't have the tenure of being wherever you want to be. Aim, go for it, and you won't be disappointed.
And let's look at the impact of you in your career. So let's say you start as an architect or an engineer. I don't care, based on what you love. You're starting out with a $150,000 job versus a $60,000 job. 2 years later, your next job pays you $250,000. Whereas if you started a job that pays you $50,000, 2 years later, you get a job that pays you $75,000. 2 years later, you get a job that pays $100,000. And you can lose a decade of your life earning more than $100,000 a year more. And that's an extra $1 million in your savings account for you to retire. And, you take that over the course of 7 years at a 7% compound interest rate. And in 14 years, that's $2 million. And in 21 years, that's 4 million. And in 28 years, that's $8 million additional things that's sitting in your retirement account. So we're finance people as architects. We're not accountants. And that's why I wanted you to see the finance side of this. These are good questions.
How can your AWS course help with the Azure prep, and do you offer vendor neutral training? Given my infra and app management background, how long would it take for me to land a great job? Is there placement support as well?
So getting a job is absolutely nothing in our program. People reach out to our students all the time, especially when our students follow. Our training is vendor neutral. I will never train anyone for just a single vendor because they won't have any job ever. I don't need a robot that loves AWS to come and get excited about AWS and drive me down the AWS path. I don't need a robot for Azure. I don't need a robot for anybody. I need, when I hire an architect, someone that's going to come in, learn and understand my business, and create a technology blueprint that's going to enhance my business. So there's that. Now, that's what it really takes. Infrastructure and app management doesn't mean you're going to know how to be an architect. It doesn't. Now, if I could interview you and I could assess your communication skills and I could assess your presentation skills and I could assess your sales skills and I could assess your leadership skills and I can assess your executive presence, then I could give you an answer of how long it would take. But I can't do that here and now. I can tell you it will get hired, and I will tell you that from experience, it takes 6 to 12 months for the average person. I will tell you that people come from a sales background or a medical background or a psychology background where they're really good at reading people and asking the right questions and giving presentations. They're the first people to get hired. I'll tell you who the second people are to get hired. They're my networking people and my data center people. And why is that? Because the cloud is somebody else's network in a data center. Yeah. And if you've been working with setting up the routing and the switching and the load balancers and the virtual machines and the containers and the container orchestration and the storage area networks, you're going to be much easier to train than if you have an application background. Because what is the cloud? Just renting space in someone else's network in a data center. Have I taken software developers and made them great cloud architects? All the time. But I will tell you 6 to 12 months is going to be average. And here's the thing. You might get hired sooner. But I like to under promise and over deliver. And in my experience, it's 6 to 12 months. Do I have some people that can't finish in 12 months and stick around longer? I sure do. And that's okay too. Do I have other people that have a photographic memory and can literally spend 2 months and read and remember and go through our 800 hours of training? Yeah, I do. And they get through too. But the key with us is you're going to stay on our program until you're hired. You got a year in the live training and you don't need it. And you have unlimited and all those other resources of, our content management system, our communications and collaborations platforms. And I'll tell you, we've got lots and lots of people that get hired. And as long as they do the work, they tend to do great. But we will give you every skill that you need. And of course, our training is vendor neutral. How do I really solve a company's problems if I'm the fanboy or fangirl for any company? Watch this. Hey, Alonzo, I got all this exciting AWS stuff. He'd look at me and kick me out of the room. I'd be fired immediately. Yeah. Alonzo, tell me about your business. Tell me about your goals. Tell me about your pain points. Okay, Alonzo, let me see what technologies and tools are out there. I'll go back. We'll build my team of architects. We'll talk to Microsoft, Google, Amazon, see what they have to say. We'll reach out to the security people like Palo Alto and Fortinet and Checkpoint and Cisco. We're going to talk about your networking needs. We'll speak to Cisco. We'll speak to Juniper. We'll speak to Aviatrix and Versa Networks. For your data science and big data applications, I'm going to go talk to NVIDIA and see what they have to say, as well as AMD, and see what they have to say. We'll come back to you with something. That's something that solves people's problems. And if you look at it to put it into context, if you buy a Mercedes and you open the hood, it's not all Mercedes parts in there. Mm-hmm. Some parts will be made by Bosch. Some parts will be made by this company, Pirelli. There'll be parts from everybody. Real architecture, it's not just one vendor. I mean, that's almost never happens. Occasionally it does. And that's why we have to give you the skills to be there. So everything we do is vendor neutral. And that's why our students work everywhere.
Mhm. From SA, what cloud career path should I take if I want to avoid being replaced by AI and end up as a principal architect or enterprise architect?
The career path is then you should take a job. So these are the jobs that aren't going to be replaced by AI. Sales, program management, architecture, or any job that requires human to human things. So I like to say celebrate your humanity. If you want to be a cloud architect, train to be a cloud architect, and that will be your first job. You want to be an AI architect, train to be an AI architect, and that will be your first job. That's your career path. You don't become a flight attendant and say later, woohoo, maybe somebody's going to let me be an airplane pilot. And you might get lucky, or you may have to go to flight school. Your career path is you study for the career you want, you get great at the career you want, you get hard in the career you want, and you train every day to be the best you can at it. That's the career path. Now, enterprise architect, I do have an enterprise architect program, and we've gotten lots of people hired as enterprise architects. When we train enterprise architects, we do it a little different than normal people. Normally, enterprise architects are people that live in a suit. They're all executive, and they typically don't have any understanding of the underlying technology. I mean, it's pretty bad. I've been an enterprise architect. Before I worked with it, I was a specialty architect working with enterprise architects, and I spent 90% of my time explaining technology to them. So what we do when we train enterprise architects is we do the following. We teach them enterprise architecture, like the business process re-engineering, all that business acumen. And we also put them in our cloud architect training program. Because in today's world, everything's cloud, whether it's an OpenStack cloud, a Nutanix cloud, a VMware cloud, or AWS cloud, Azure cloud, Oracle cloud, Google cloud, it doesn't matter. So we actually train people to be cloud architects and enterprise architects in the same program. Now, if we have people that have never worked in tech before, it won't be uncommon for people to take our enterprise architect program and get hired as a solutions architect or a cloud architect first, and then a couple years later move into an enterprise architect role. That's going to be the hardest one to do with no background. But I've also had people that have never worked in tech, like Wallace Agana, get enterprise architect roles after our training, or Jermaine Hoofton. So that can happen too. But realistically speaking, I'd say pick an architect type: cloud architect, network architect, AI architect, cloud security architect, and then move into one. And architects cannot be replaced by AI because every piece of new technology requires a new architecture, including a new business architecture. And as an architect, you have to present, you have to lead, you have to ask the right questions, manage stakeholders, negotiate. And you know what else you'll be doing as an architect a lot? You'll be playing golf with your clients. You'll be taking them to dinner. You'll be taking them to the Super Bowl box seats to build your relationships with them. This is a person-to-person thing. I think there was one year where I spent $100,000 on lunches, dinners, and drinks on the company credit card as an architect. That's how much person-to-person job this is. So architects can't be replaced by AI. Because we're not a hands-on role.
Masi, as a software engineer is better to pursue an application architect role as opposed to a cloud architect or enterprise architect role, or are they just similar roles in themselves?
So this is the biggest thing to keep people from getting to their goals in life. You know, 5 days ago, my wife said, let's go to Miller's Ale House and get some cheeseburgers. And while I was there, I ordered a salad, and I put a lot of dressing on that salad. Now, normally, I eat fish, I eat chicken, I eat berries, I eat broccoli. You know, I don't eat bad foods. Why am I telling you this? I had a bad dinner 5 days ago with too much salad dressing. And you know what I did the next day? I woke up, I did my PT, I practiced my yoga, and I ate healthy. And I haven't eaten a bad food since those last 5 days. What you ate for dinner yesterday has no bearing on your future. When I was practicing internal medicine and I said I was going to be an architect, guess what I did? I got the training and worked as a network architect a couple months later. It was no big deal. What you've done yesterday has no bearing on what you want to do tomorrow. The question I have for you is, what would you like to do? you want to be a physician? Go to medical school. Do you want to be an attorney? Go to law school. Want to be an airplane pilot? Go to flight school. Want to be a cloud architect? Get trained in it. Want to be an application architect? That's fine too. To go from engineering to architecture, you're still going to have to learn the presentation skills. You're still going to have to learn the sales skills. You're still going to have to learn the executive presence. You're still going to have to train your emotional intelligence. You're still going to have to train your business acumen. You're still going to have to train your leadership. Engineering, architecture, not the same job. So what do you want to do? They're all similar roles. Every architect out there is focused on transformation of a business. But don't touch the tech. So the bigger question is, what would you want to do? Look, Lohit was a student of ours. Lohit was a software developer, came to us, took our cloud architect program, and ended up learning all the architecture things from us. What do I mean by that? The business, the sales, the executive presence, the leadership. And when AWS offered him a great application architect job, he took it, and he loves it. But the key is for the architect role from the engineering, it's all about getting those extra skills. That is the case. So do whatever you want. What you did yesterday does not have any bearing on your future. I've had lots of software engineers that are retrained that went straight into cloud architect roles or enterprise architect role. Peer-to-Paul St. John was an example. I've also had nurses that went into cloud architect roles. What you do today determines your future, not what you did yesterday. Want to get in shape? And you're not in shape right now? Here's what you need to do. First, fix your diet. Then find somebody that can help you build the appropriate exercise plan. Then follow that exercise plan and follow your nutrition plan. Stop smoking, and if you drink a lot, stop drinking, and poof, you'll be in shape as soon as you follow the plan. And it doesn't matter what you did first. It matters that we can get you there. Let's go to the next question, Tyrone.
From Pen and Paper, Mike, how do you see quantum computing potentially disrupting cloud security and encryption protocols for the next decade?
Well, I don't think it's going to affect it very much at all, because as quantum computing actually becomes important, and it will at some point in the future, then we will change the encryption algorithms to be something that they can't be broken easily by either. But right now, who has quantum computers? For the most part, Google would have a quantum computer. Google is not focused on hacking into your systems. So there's that. But, I was there when MD5 encryption was big and scary and hard to crack. Now it's nothing. As GPUs get stronger, as GPU computing gets stronger, and or potentially quantum computing gets stronger, we will constantly be updating our encryption standards and things. Now, the bigger question is how do we protect our systems from governments that may want to hack into other people's systems? And that's going to take a much bigger security architecture. So there's that. But we can have clouds that don't go out and connect to the internet. They're not going to be easily hackable. So we have to determine, and in a really high security environment, you'll go into a room, and first you're going to have to be authenticated to go in that room. And that could be, your eye plus something Then you go in that room, you might be able to read a file, right? There's no internet access. You're in a Faraday cage. Everything's blocked. So there's lots of ways we can actually secure what we need to when we know exactly what we're trying to protect. But it's like anything else. The weapons to crack the system get better, and the weapons to defend the system get better. So every new problem generates a new solution. Great question. I can go to 4:30. I pushed back the appointment I had, Tyrone.
From Mohammed, are there any differences between cloud and cloud that consumers use as any cloud provider?
Yes, there's major differences. So here's the thing. When you go to a regular cloud and get a regular virtual machine, like an EC2 instance on AWS, a compute engine instance on Google, of Azure virtual machine, an Oracle virtual machine, typically speaking, it's you and potentially 50 other businesses that are all on that same server. And inside of that cloud provider, there's thousands, if not tens of thousands or millions of customers. So if you're on the same server as somebody else, you could potentially try to orchestrate a hypervisor attack. If you're on the same cloud, should the cloud have a security flaw, you can get other customers' information. Is this likely? The answer is no. A government cloud basically is a data center that only allows the government stuff in there and nobody else's. So, and Mohammed, I know where you're at in Somalia, and I know how much you train and how much you think. You always have good ideas. So, here's the thing to remember. If you had your own data center and didn't allow anybody else into it, it'd be more secure than if you had a shared data center. That's a government cloud, or a data center built exactly for the government that nobody else is allowed on. Kind of like the government could run on their own. But is our government focused on being tech experts, or are they focused on other stuff? Whereas as a cloud provider focused on being an expert in the technology.
They also even have their own governmental frameworks on how they do enterprise architecture as well.
Yep.
So there's that. But when you, like Mike said, the more how secure is a party versus how secure is a police precinct. So you think about people going in and out, doing whatever that they're doing on their dedicated servers, or they're borrowing virtual machines and instances based off of the market at the time, versus going into a police precinct. You have to have certain protocols there. So there's lots to be said, but overall that is a very 10,000 foot view of the comparison.
Yeah.
Super Rayan. Hi, we currently have a project to build our digital transformation strategy and to set up our roadmap of financial services. How important is it to study the as-is architecture, and how deep do we need to go?
Okay, this is critical. So, if you're going to examine a patient, you need to know their current medical conditions and their current medications before you could make any recommendations. The as-is architecture is what the customer has now. So, Super, if you remember when I talked about the process, the first thing you do is you examine the organization's goals. Then you examine their current business processes, and then you look at their future business processes. Then you examine their current technology, and you see if where the current technology's strengths, weaknesses are, and will they support this new future business goals. And you need to know what's working and what's not working. If you don't examine the current architecture, you'll have no idea what you need to design, and you have no idea what you need to replace. So, keeping that in the back of your mind, it is absolutely essential to know what you have. And if you don't know what you have, these are the following things that are going to happen. One is you'll be replacing things that are working, and you'll be giving them a new solution that may not work as well. You will not understand what you have, and you will break things along the way because you may not understand why certain things are working, and you will miss key components of the architecture. So it is absolutely essential. That's why most architectures for digital transformation take 6 to 12 months and 15 to 50 people, because that network architect that's going to be designing the new network needs to know what the current network looks like. The big data architects need to be able to understand, okay, what kind of data do you have? If you have garbage data and you want to do AI, you can't. So what are the steps to collect the right data to create the training model? But you don't know it if you don't know your starting place. So architecture, medicine, any big career like law, they're all about examining where you are now and determining where you want to go and building the plan to get you from point A to point B. If I had a sales rep that wanted to become a cloud architect, do I really need to teach that sales rep business acumen if they're selling millions and $50 million a year of stuff? Do I need to teach them how to sell? Do I need to teach them how to communicate or present? Probably not. But I need to teach them the tech. Now I got an engineer that's been building this stuff forever. Do I need to teach them how to sell? Yeah. Do I need to teach them how to present? Absolutely. Do I need to teach them how to lead a large team? Most likely. Do I need to teach them how to business case? Definitely. Do I need to teach them how to build an ROI model? Yes, absolutely. So in any kind of transformation, whether it's coaching, Whether it's physical training, whether it's medicine or architecture, you must know your starting point. So yes, it's critical, but that doesn't mean you have to do it all yourself. A good architect will leverage a team. It's a great question.
From Super Ray, and again, I'm planning to take the Enterprise Architect certification, but do you have advice to go comprehensive with the Enterprise Architect or learn more on cloud architecture?
Well, you're talking about an enterprise architect certification. I'm going to tell you right now, it has absolutely nothing to do with enterprise architecture. None, zero. All these enterprise architect certifications are phases and states. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So if we look, and I am a fan of the TOGAF architecture, I tend to like it. So what are we really talking about when we talk about a TOGAF architecture? Well, it's all about designing it in states. So if you didn't know how to be an architect, I promise you TOGAF will teach you nothing on how to be an architect. But if you did know how to be an architect and you were trained to be an architect and you followed the TOGAF methodology, it would say, look, start with the architecture vision. What's the goal of the company? Then examine the business architecture. Then examine the information systems architecture. Then examine the technology architecture. Then look for opportunities and solutions. Then think about migration planning. Then think about implementation governance, and then build a plan around change management. Now, that enterprise architecture certification doesn't teach you how to create the architectural vision. It doesn't teach you how to map out business processes. It doesn't teach you how to evaluate the information systems architecture and create a new one. It doesn't teach you the technology architecture. So if you're already trained to be an architect, it will help teach you a standard set of step-by-steps, but they're not there. So the question I have is, what are your goals? You want to be an enterprise architect? Go learn how to be an enterprise architect. You want to become a cloud architect? Go learn how to be a cloud architect. What are your goals? And if I can impart anything on any of you, is that you can all do anything you want. There is nothing you can't do. Now, I got to tell you, if I want to go to Athens, Greece, beautiful place, I have to know what airplanes to get on to go to Athens, Greece. If I want to go to Cape Town and visit Tyrone from our team, and I definitely want to go to Cape Town, I need to know which airplanes to take. But the airplanes I take to go to Cape Town, South Africa, are going to be different than the airplanes I take to go to Bangalore, India. So what is the ultimate goal? That determines what you should do. Because you can do it all. There's no rules. You know, Al Legister is a sales rep and Deloitte's hiring him as a senior solution architect. There's no rules. One day I'm practicing internal medicine and the next day I know I'm a lead architect on Wall Street. There's no rules. What you get is based upon what your skills are, how good you can communicate your skills, how good you can build your brand, how good you can sell yourself, and how good you can interview. That determines where you go.
Well said, Mike. SA, I'm currently working with AWS at my job pulling data for quarterly reporting in DOM from Domo as a data analyst. Could this help me segue into working as an architect?
Okay. So what you're saying to me is, I'm a flight attendant right now, and now I want to be an airplane pilot. Will my flight attendant experience help me? Or I'm a nurse, and now I want to be a doctor. Will that help me? So the answer is, in some ways, it will. But being good at somebody else's job doesn't get you your next job. How many people find a nurse on the street and say, please do surgery on me? Zero. Now, is it not that that nurse isn't smart? It's that it's not what they're trained in. So you're good at pulling data right now, which I love. That's great. Now, I'm going to say we have an airline, and I need you to design a strategies to make recommendations so we can purchase our fuel price option contracts at the lowest cost. And you're going to say, but I can pull data. Now, I'm an architect. I've never run an SQL query in my life. Why would I? I'm not a data person. I'm an architect. So what you're saying is you have very good skills, and I believe that, and it's good. but you're looking to go to a career that you need a different set of skills. And what you ate for dinner yesterday does not determine what you eat for dinner today. So you do have valuable experience, you do. And when it comes to an architecture, I'm sure that what you have is potentially helping you. Maybe you're really good at scaling relational databases. Maybe you know how and where to implement caching and queuing and database selection and database partitioning. That might be a help. It might be, if you know that. Knowing how to pull a query is not very helpful to us, but it might give you some experience on how the user might be, and that might give you some experience as part of your one of a 15,000 skills on how to potentially design this for a better user experience for the person that pulls the data. So no matter where you're at, it will help you. Everything you learn will help you. If you learn how to be a doctor, I promise you that's going to help you because it's the same job. But learning how to do a doing job is not going to teach you how to do a planning job. That's the biggest issue we have when we train architects, is people focus on cloud projects, and somebody else's career. I love DevOps engineers. They're rock stars. But a DevOps engineer doesn't know anything about architecture. An architect doesn't know anything about how to be a DevOps engineer. And an airplane pilot doesn't know how to practice medicine. And you know who knows the airplane systems best? The mechanics that fix them. But they don't know how to fly the plane either. So that's the thing. You can do it. You can be great at it. Figure out what you want and get the right training, and you'll be there. It doesn't matter your background. And I really want you to get it. You can be anything. 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 And it's up to you to determine what it is you want, how bad do you want it, and then going to do whatever it takes to get there. Look, 13 surgeons told me I would never walk again after an orthopedic surgeons told me I'd never walk again after an injury. I told all 13 of them they were crazy. And they were like, Mike, you've got reflex sympathetic dystrophy. It's the worst and the most painful condition in the world. You will be disabled forever. And I said, no, I won't. I hired the best physical therapists in the world. I hired the best yoga instructors. I hired the best Ralphers. I hired specialists in experimental and anti-aging and regenerative medicine. Now, it took me 7 years to be able to walk up and down the stairs of my house. But I did it. And I was able to get through it. Because when you have a goal and you have a dream and you are willing to do whatever it takes, you can achieve anything. I mean, anything. I worked 3 jobs just to pay for college. It was horrible, but I still graduated. I went to 2 different universities full-time at the same time while maintaining a full-time job. That was some of the worst years of my life. I got to tell you, it was horrible. But each day I woke up and said, I can get through the day. I can go to Widener University for my 1 degree in healthcare. I can get an MBA at Drexel, and I can still manage to be a full-time paramedic. And I did. I don't miss those days. It was horrible, but you can do it. So all of you, go out there and fire your dreams. Find out what you want, whatever it is. What are you passionate about? What are you doing? Then when you know what it is, go build the plan. Find out whatever training it is you need and get it. Why? Because you're not going to get there with these big goals without getting help from someone. If we don't know what we know and know what we don't know, we can't figure it out. I can't teach myself how to fly an airplane. I just can't. I can't teach myself how to do surgery. I just can't. But
parachuting.
I had somebody teach me how to do these things. I'm not going to jump out of an airplane until somebody teaches me how to use the parachute either. I mean, I might figure it out if it says pull here, or I might panic and not be able to do it. But that's the key. Just know, believe in yourself. You can do anything. I mean, anything. All you got to do is build the right plan, get the right training, and work at it until you're there. And never, never, never quit until you get to your goal. I hope we see Simone Biles doing it the 3rd time. She's like one of the oldest gymnasts in the world right now. And I bet with her focus, she gets some gold medals, or at least I hope she does. I love watching that little powerhouse do the things that she does. And all of you can do it. So I hope you had some lessons to learn. If you had a good time, maybe hit the like button, maybe subscribe. We will be here to help you in your career, whatever that career is. If it's a career we teach, we'd love to teach you. We're not going to mandate that we teach you. If it's another career that we don't teach, we'll still help you get there with our technology team, because we just want you to be happy. We want you to have a life that you love and go out there and be happy. Thank you all, everyone. It was so nice to see you.